I could not believe what I was seeing. I could have filled the back of his head with 5.56, which is an absolute joke.
Well, it's not an ape, because if the Sasquatch was an ape, we would already have one.
What are these elusive hominids that stalk the wilderness? Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to the mystery. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Creek Devil. We have Nate with us today. Nate, your son is also going to be with us, correct?
Yes, that's correct. He's right here next to me.
Okay, awesome. Well, Tom, since you've already spoken with Nate, I'm going to have you lead off, and we'll get rolling here.
Nate, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you guys doing?
Very, very good. So you and I spoke a little bit, and I think you had some interesting evidence that you had picked up on, and a lot of activity. You're in, I'm not going to give the exact location, but you're up, I believe, in the northeast part of Washington State.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Okay.
I don't mind.
Go ahead.
We live in Spokane, actually, Spokane, Washington, but our area is within a couple-hour drive, depending on where we're going. So yeah, it's fairly close. We kind of live in the middle of the mountains here. We've got them all around us here in Spokane. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go ahead and we'll just start from the beginning and fill us in on what's been going on up there.
Well, we had a trip this last weekend, actually. I don't know if you got the stuff I sent you via email, but we found a really huge structure. Did you get those pictures?
I did. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that was quite a deal, the biggest structure we've ever found, and it was pretty amazing. It was real intricate. All the limbs and branches were snapped off. There was a tree that was growing up on the left side. It was actually growing there, and this is a pretty good-sized tree. Gosh, I'd say a good 6 inches across, and it was broken over and twisted, and then that was actually supporting part of the structure. So,
right.
It was. We were shocked, to say the least. And then, it was a good weekend. We heard a scream on the opposite ridge the next day. Did a callback, got it to call back to us twice, and we got one on video on that. It's distant, it's a little hard to hear, but if you turn up the volume, you can hear it. So that was just our last trip this weekend. Yeah, so we have some good areas. We have a lot of luck.
I want to jump in for a second.
Yeah.
The structure. Have you been to this area before, and have you seen anything like this in any of the other areas?
Well, not like this one. We and we have been there before. We were there last summer. It's one of the areas we like to go to. We were in the exact spot, as a matter of fact. We'd hike back. It's only about 5 minutes from where our camp spot is, by a creek that sits back in there. And we were there last summer, hiked back in there just to check out the creek, and that wasn't there. The structure wasn't there. And that was the end of last August. And I have to note that you can't even get into this area probably from early December to late May, early June. In fact, we tried to go there the weekend before Memorial Day. What was that, about 3 weeks ago? And we couldn't get in there, but the snow was still too deep. So, it was a big structure, and it had a lot of green in it, a lot of green limbs, a lot of green leaves and pine needles and stuff. So we think it was really fresh.
Yeah, it is. I'm looking at it right now. One thing I want to mention, and we are going to post this on the web, is it was woven. This isn't really wouldn't serve. It's not. This isn't snowfall. This isn't deadfall. This is something that was obviously constructed.
Definitely. We sat there and I tried to film it the best I could, at every angle, and we tried to document everything that way. But we found a lot of structures where you get the the big trees that have been snapped off and they're stuck in like an X structure, and there's some woven in between. You've seen those classic ones. We find a lot of those, but this was different. This was really different. It was like you said, it was all woven together. It had to have taken a lot of time to build it. And it's remote. It's a remote spot,
Well, the other thing I really want to point out to everybody, to our audience, is even though it's woven and intricate, number one, it's not deadfall, it's not snowfall, and it's not weather related. It also would serve a pretty poor function if some hikers were in there. It would just be an amazing amount of work for little protection.
Right. I agree. It just didn't make sense to us. I agree with you. It just, I guess a human could do it, but it just does not make sense.
For what purpose?
Yeah, exactly. I guess you could throw a tarp over it, but it just, and like I said, you couldn't even get in there 3 weeks ago. So there would have been a small window late last year, I guess, for someone to do it. But then again, you look at all the green on it, and so that doesn't really make sense either. So we always try to debunk our stuff. We don't just jump in and say it's Bigfoot on everything.
Sure.
We always try to debunk it first, and we couldn't debunk that one. Yeah,
it's certainly interesting. I guess what I find really fascinating is the size of the trees that are just snapped.
Yes, especially that one on the left side. If you watch our video, and you can watch that on our WIPS page, also on Facebook, Washington, Idaho Bigfoot Search. That the one on the left there, it was actually growing there. I know I'm repeating myself, and you can see the size of it, and it was snapped over and twisted, just shredded. And then that was used as a support where a lot of the other big branches kind of, there was a branch there that was ripped down the middle. You can look at the video and you can see it. It's pretty neat. And that was our last trip. So, we have some great areas. We're real fortunate. I always tell people that if you know where they're at and you go and you spend time there, you will have stuff happen. It's a matter of kind of knowing where to go. Although they're everywhere up here. I can see a mountain out my front door here, and there's Bigfoot reports up there, just out my front door, which is great.
Can I jump in real quick and ask a question? Why do you think that they do this? I mean, is it to kind of send a message, or is it? It's probably not a hunting thing, but like, what do you think about that?
That's a good question. This one in particular, the ones we talked about before, where they're just big trees that are broken off and kind of placed in X formations and woven through other trees. I think those might just be markers, perhaps. Of course, I don't know. I'm maybe territorial, but this one that we found last weekend, I would say, if I had to guess, I would say maybe a blind, kind of like a hunting blind. It was right by a creek. I mean, it's hard to say. We're all learning. It's such a great subject because there's so much to learn, and it seems like the more you learn, the less you know. But that would be my guess. Like this one, I think was probably some kind of a blind, or I don't know. That would be my guess.
Yeah, that's a great response, actually. And can you go back and just describe the structure? Like, I mean, this tree was huge, right?
It was good size. Yeah. We could get under it. It was, trying to think of how long it was. Gosh, it was probably a good, I'd say 15 feet, maybe longer. And I'm 5'10", and I could get in, and I just barely had to crouch down. I could get inside of it. and it kind of surrounded you. It's kind of like a half of a tunnel. If you look at it, you'll see what I'm talking about. But yeah, and my son just made a good point. All the green stuff, because the thicker stuff on the one side would be, like if you're looking at the front of it, it was on the right side. All the green was on the creek side. So maybe that was, they were trying to, camouflage themselves from that side. I'm not sure. But yeah, I wish your viewers could see. I guess they could go to your site and see it, or go to our page and see it. But I think when people see it, it speaks for itself. It really does. Yeah. And like I said, biggest thing biggest, most intricate structure we've ever found.
Yeah.
Could you also, I'm really curious about the audio. Could you elaborate a little bit on what you guys heard out there?
Yeah, you bet. So this was the next day. I want to say it was late morning. Excuse me. I was sitting by the fire, and Corey was off to the side feeding his dog, and I heard a scream, or a call, whatever you want to call it. Way off in the distance, sounded like it came from the opposite ridge, which would be west from where we were. And I was surprised. Right away I said, "Corey, did you hear that?" And he didn't hear it. He was fumbling with the dog food and all that, making noise. And I said, "I just heard a scream on that mountain." And so we kind of sat there a minute, and then I said, "Well, I'm going to do a scream back, see if it," because we've had luck doing that, have them respond to us quite a few times. And so I did a scream, and sure enough, it responded back. And it happened twice, and I got the third one on. That's when I grabbed the camera. Of course, wish I would have grabbed it earlier, but we got the third one on video audio. And you can hear it. Like I said, you have to turn up the volume. Like a pair of headphones would be great. And you can hear it in the video off in the distance. But it was a ways off, and there might have been two, because one of the calls sounded closer, and then the last one sounded pretty distant. So it's possibly it could have been two out there, is what we were thinking. But you can clearly hear it. It's faint, but you can hear it.
Yeah. Well,
and it was a scream. It was sorry. It was it wasn't a whoop. We've heard whoops before. This was more of a loud scream or call. It had some power to it, because like I said, it was way off, and we could clearly hear it in person. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. And I sometimes I wonder if maybe they're not, who knows? I mean, what's the purpose of it? It could be for no other reason than to let the others know where they're at, or to find, maybe the speculation could go on forever. When you guys are camping.
Sorry.
Well, I was going to ask, the location where you're camping at, were there any game trails nearby that you noticed?
Yeah, there was. It's kind of weird, and I was thinking about this the other day. In our areas, we don't see a lot of wildlife, which kind of makes sense, I guess, if there's Bigfoot in the area. But yeah, there's game trails. We did see some game trails. I lost my train of thought. I was going to say, back to the calls. I was going to say, we think that they locate each other that way, especially the whoops, because we've communicated with them with whoops before. So I think it's, like you said, kind of a way to locate each other, communicate.
So when you say you've communicated with it, you're saying you got a response when you've made
Yes. This was another time. Yes, in another area. This was pretty neat. My son was there with me. It was his first time out there in this particular area. We had hiked up this trail late at night, and it was on our way, but it was kind of quiet. We didn't hear much, and we were hiking back down, and it was kind of a last-ditch effort. And this has happened quite a few times, kind of later in the night when you think everything's done, and you're not getting much out there. So I let out a scream, and immediately got a whoop, like a classic whoop back from this ridge right across from us. And this particular area, we can talk about this. It's a whole nother story, but this particular area, there's been a sighting. There's been tons and tons of action in there. So basically all these stories were verified when we heard this thing whoop back at us. And so I whooped back. I tried to copy exactly what it sounded like, and got a whoop. It happened 4 times, and then it stopped. But it was a whoop back, I whooped, that type of thing. So it was almost as if I think we caught him off guard, because we were coming down that trail late at night and did the scream, and it whooped back immediately. We kind of felt like we surprised him. And, it whooped back at us, I think, 4 times from another ridge. So that was pretty neat. It kind of feels like you're communicating with them. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
When you
Just make sure you're not calling in make sure you don't call the group into you. That's all.
Yeah, no kidding. No, I know we're still learning, but that was and my son was just floored. He just couldn't believe it. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience to get those whoops back, a direct response
another
to what
thing,
you're doing.
Yeah, I can't help but wondering if they're not actually doing it in response to when you make a whoop or any kind of a sound, but may or may not be actually. I think they can distinguish between a human and whether it's somebody within their group. You never know. It's interesting.
You know what? I think you're right, Tom. I did it. Like I said, it was a pretty loud scream. I think it caught him off guard. Maybe it was a young one. And then, like I said, it was only 4 times, but it whooped back 4 times. But then we tried again and it stopped. So I think they were on to us. But we got a little nervous there because we had a pretty good hike out still. And we kind of thought, well, that's probably a locator thing and maybe they're coming to us now. So, I mean, we didn't run out of there, but we didn't stick around very long after that. Looking back on that, I wish we would have. This was quite a few years back, and this is a great area we can talk about if you want. But there's all kinds of stories from this particular area.
Hey, let me jump in there. I was just about to ask that. What are some of the specific stories from that area that you've heard of or that you knew about this beforehand? Yeah.
Okay, so this is the North Fork of the Clearwater River. It's I'll just start at the beginning. My wife's dad was a professional hunting guide outfitter out of Idaho, and this is up above the North Fork. So this is all the creeks that feed into the North Fork of the Clearwater. You go to Superior, Montana, and you go over a pass. You're in Montana. You end up going about 6,000 feet up, drop back into Idaho. It's in that general area. But they had my father-in-law had all kinds of stories over the years about Bigfoot, and I wasn't really into it, but I remember him telling us all the stories. And anyways, we do a yearly trip there now. That's one of our main areas that we go. And so he used to run a camp up there, and all of the hunters they avoided this one area. They named it Boogeyman Gulch. It was basically a big mountain draw with a creek running through it. And they'd all had weird experiences, heard screams and noises. And every time they went through there, they felt like they were being watched. And so they all kind of avoided that area, especially at night. And then they had this one hunter come in one year. His name was Farrell. He was a Vietnam vet. And he decided that he wanted to hunt in this area. And my father-in-law and the other hunters were like, well, we kind of avoid that area. It's we get a real bad feeling in there, and we don't like to go in there, especially at night. And he goes, oh, I'm not afraid of nothing. I'm going up there. It looks like a good spot or whatever. And so he proceeded to go in there. They were hunting elk. He set up in the draw in this spot and was sitting there for quite a while, I guess. And he started getting a weird feeling. And he at some point he noticed what he thought was a big black stump down below him, and he kind of focused in on what he thought was a stump. And after a certain amount of time went by, this stump stood up, screamed at him, took 4 or 5 steps toward him, and screamed again. And this guy, you can imagine what that was like. And this guy hightailed it out of there as fast as he could, and it was right behind him, crashing and screaming and breaking trees and branches. And there was an old there was an old tree stand about halfway back to the old hunting camp, and this is a long ways. We've hiked it many times. It's a good hike to get in there, so I can't imagine this guy running for his life through there to get away from this thing. But he jumped in this old tree stand and was counting his bullets. He only had a few bullets, so he ended up jumping out of the tree stand and, ran all the way back to the old hunting camp and left. And all the rest of the hunters, my father-in-law, got back, and his truck was gone. So they knew something was up. But, they were, I don't know if it was midweek of the hunt. So my father-in-law ended up having to track him down a week later when they got back. And he told him what happened. And that's the story I'm telling you, what was relayed to my father-in-law. And he said, Dave, I saw a Bigfoot, and I thought it was going to kill me, and I'll never go back there. And so that definitely verified all the feelings and the stories from the other hunters. And quite a deal. So that was the big story out of there. And there was a game warden that patrolled that whole area on horseback for 30 years. His name was Gene Eastman. You can look him up. He wrote a book called The Bitterroot Crossing. He had all kinds of stories. He became friends with my father-in-law over the years. He'd come in and check everyone's tags and do all that stuff and sit by the fire with them. And it's a super remote area, so I can imagine he's probably looking for some companionship up there too. But he had all kinds of stories of screams, and I don't know if he ever actually saw one, but we've had our own experiences. That's where we got the whoops. I was just telling you guys about the callbacks in that area. So just an unbelievable area. It's almost like a rainforest up there. Super thick, ferns everywhere. Beautiful, beautiful country. We love it up there.
Hey, Nate, when I think you may have mentioned this, but kind of what was the time frame of the guy that saw where the stump stood up and screamed at him?
Yeah. The time frame? What do you mean, like the year?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It would have had to have been, I'm guessing early 80s. I think he ran that hunting camp from the late 70s to maybe the mid 80s. So somewhere in that time frame.
Okay. And so after this incident, I can understand why he said that was it. I'm not going back. I'm glad that he came out and said, this is the reason. Look, I saw Bigfoot. I'm not going back.
Exactly. No, I agree. Yeah. He told him flat out, like the next week when my father-in-law hunted him down to find out what was wrong. You can imagine all the hunters getting back at night or after dark, and this guy's gone and his truck's gone, and there's no phone service up there, at all. So what do you do? I don't know if there's anything else they could have done. They saw that he was gone. So yeah, what a weird thing to come back to. Hunter's gone with no explanation. And I guess they would have worried more if his truck was still there, obviously, but his truck was gone. So they figured, well, maybe something happened and he left. I don't know.
I was kind of putting myself in his mindset. If it was me and you go back, you're wanting to get out of there, and you're probably wanting to share it with the other hunters, and you might, I don't know, I'm just speculating, but you're looking around, nobody's around, I'm gone.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing, and this thing chased him. I don't think it was the whole way back, but from the way I remember the story, the way my father-in-law tells it, it chased him, at least halfway back to that tree stand, which is a long ways. And you have to understand, this whole area is real thick. It's hard to navigate. It's not just a hike. You're hiking over deadfalls and over creeks, and it is thick. So I can imagine this guy was probably a little banged up too, running through that stuff. And I could see him leaving just because, like you said, no, there's no one else there. He's by himself. He's only got a few bullets, and he's just seen what's not supposed to exist. And he thought it was going to kill him, and he's there by himself. Maybe he just decided, I'm out of here. That's a good point.
Will, you and I talked about, yesterday, we discussed this a little bit about the feeling you get in those situations. And it really boils down to every man for himself.
Yeah, that really is where it's at. I mean, you're not thinking about anything else except your own survival.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, the guy was obviously scared for his life. And this was, this was a tough guy, a Vietnam vet, and shoot. Yeah, it says a lot. So, yeah, the guy was absolutely terrified.
Hey, let me jump in real quick, because obviously, we've talked about the years that you're talking about, but let me just ask a question about the time framing. What time of year have you seen the most experiences, or is it during the hunting season, or just out of curiosity, like what are the time frames that you see the most activity? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. It is. It's hunting season. It's from September to November is really when all the major stuff happens. I think elk season starts up there in September, so I'm guessing it might have been September when that happened to that guy. But we've timing is important. I think you brought up a good point, because we do this trip every year up there for a week. It's our big major camping trip of the year. And we've moved it around a little bit. Like, one year we went, I want to say the second week of August, and we got nothing. It was dead quiet. Didn't get anything all week. It was pretty frustrating. And then the times we've gone in early September, we've gotten a lot more activity. So I don't know, you guys would know better than I would, but we kind of think that they follow the game. Like, they're up high in the summer when it's hot, if that makes sense. And then maybe they come down and follow the game down in the fall, possibly when it cools down. That's kind of, we've definitely seen a pattern, because we've done this trip for about, I want to say 7 years now. And a couple of those trips we think we went too early. So I think timing is important on that. And then we can talk about it later, but our big hunting camp encounter that we had was the third week of October. So I think there's a lot to be said about the time of year, at least up in our area where we have experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, we find that when it cools off, we get a lot more activity when it's colder.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. That's kind of the experience that I've had. Was spring and fall seems to be the times that I've had most activity. Screams and that sort of thing.
Us too. Yep.
Yeah. And of course, it really stands to reason they're going to be following the game trails, the game. And so tell us, so you had some other activity. What was one of the other experiences you had up there?
Well, we've got another spot that we like to go to. You want me to tell the hunting camp encounter, or should we save that for last? That's kind of the big one for us. It kind of changed everything for us.
Okay.
We've got another area we go to. It's the Sullivan Lake area. So it's North Washington. It's way up by the Canadian border. It's more on the Washington side than the Idaho side. We kind of all of our areas are kind of right on the border of Washington and Idaho in the upper part of the states. But this other spot in Washington is Sullivan Lake, Sullivan Creek, and we found a structure there. We've a few years back, me and my brother-in-law Chris, we hiked back into the woods, and it was dark. And I thought I heard we'd hiked across the creek. There was a big log, so we were able to cross this creek, and hiked up the creek a ways. And we were sitting in the woods, after dark, and I heard what I thought was a woman talking. And for some reason, it registered in my head as someone was in our camp across the creek. But the creek's really loud. Looking back on it, that was stupid. But I thought I heard this woman talking, and I said, "Chris, there's someone in our camp." And so we decided to head back to see, because we'd been doing a couple calls, maybe a couple knocks or whatever. And we thought, well, someone's messing with our stuff. And so we proceeded to hike back down the other side of the creek to get back to camp. And I didn't realize how far we had hiked up the creek. There was no way that it came from our camp. So it was it was a talking that you couldn't understand, more of like a mumbling, but I definitely heard a voice like talking. And we're on the other side of the creek. There's nobody there. It's super, super remote. So that was a really weird one. We've heard that a couple times, like talking in the woods, and you can't understand it. It's just like it's in the distance, and I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that, but it just really strange. And so anyways, we went back to camp, and there was no way. We were way too far from camp, and there was no other camp spots up across where we were. So that was, and then we got tree knocks that same night. We got some tree knocks in the middle of the night, just single knocks, really late at night.
How did you,
and then, go ahead.
Real quick, I want to ask a question on those, the mumblings and this, especially the one where it sounded like a woman was in your camp. How did you guys resolve that? How did that end up going? I mean, did you go back to your camp? Did you not see anything?
That's what happened. It was after dark. We probably wouldn't have left that early, but we heard I heard the talking. Chris said he didn't hear it, which was pretty strange. He was sitting off a ways from where I was, but we hiked back to camp, and there was nothing there. And then getting that far back to camp, realizing that we wouldn't have heard anybody at our camp. We were that far away from it, up the creek. And of course the creek's loud when you're next to a creek.
Right.
So
how many people were in your group?
It was just me and Chris. There was just two of us. So that was really odd. And that was a few years back. It was one of our earlier, actually that might've been the first time we'd been up there to Sullivan Creek, that particular area. I think it was the first time. And since then we've gone back and we found a pretty good sized structure, not like the one we just found, but more of a traditional one where you got big logs stuck in between each other and woven together. And there's a bunch of those up there. I know another group that's found a bunch of those in that area too. And then on one of our trips after this same area, we ran into some Forest Service guys. This is kind of an interesting story. We were, it was midday. We'd been out late, so we were taking a little nap in our tents that day. And I heard someone pull up in our camp, a truck. And so we kind of scurried out of the tents to see what was going on. And it was two Forest Service guys up there at Sullivan Creek. And, they asked us how we were doing and warning us. This is a grizzly recovery area, by the way. There's grizzly up there, of course, black bears and all the regular predators. So they wanted to make sure we had our food locked up, and they warned us about the bears. And it was kind of funny. The one older guy said, hey, we want to let you guys know that these campers down the road here saw a cougar yesterday. And they said some other campers saw wolves on the road a couple days ago. And, we know all that stuff's up there, so it wasn't a big deal. But it was kind of funny, out of the blue, as they were telling us all this, my son Corey was with me. It was just me and him. And he said, can I ask you a question? He goes, have you ever seen a Bigfoot? And I kind of laughed. I was kind of glad he asked, because the older gentleman said, well, as a matter of fact, he goes, I haven't seen one, but my partner saw one. And we were like all ears at that point, right? And he proceeded to tell us a story of they were on some gated road somewhere where, they only had access to it. They were doing some kind of checks or whatever they were doing up there. And his partner was driving, and this guy I was talking to was in the passenger seat. I guess he had his head down doing paperwork or whatever. And his partner hit the brakes hard on this back road. And he looked up and said, what's up? And he looked at his partner, and his partner was shaking already, just looked white as a ghost. He goes, what's wrong? And his partner said, I think I just saw a Bigfoot. And of course the guy said, well, are you sure it wasn't a bear? And, the guy said, no, it was standing straight up, and it was probably 8-9 feet tall. And I guess when the guy looked up, he could actually see some of the woods moving, but this thing was already into the woods. So it was out of sight that quick. And then his partner, he was pretty shook up about it. He said, promised him never to tell anybody, that they worked with. And he said, the guy doesn't work there anymore. So he tells the story now. So, but it was cool hearing a story like that from Forest Service guys. I just thought I'd mention that. We thought it was a neat story coming from them.
That's such a great story. I kind of want to go back just to the sound that these creatures make. I mean, you said that it was kind of like a woman scream, and that's definitely we've heard that before. So can you just kind of describe the sound that it made?
Honestly, I thought it was a woman talking, like in the distance. I just couldn't make out any words. It wasn't a scream. It was like, I mean, my brain immediately went to a woman in our camp. I don't know why. To me, it just sounded like a woman talking in the distance. And the weird thing is we, I can sit here and say these areas are remote, but unless you guys are there, I mean, they are remote. There's most of the time there's no other humans around anywhere. So when you're remote, there's no other humans around you, and you hear something like that in the woods, it just, your brain kind of is trying to figure out, okay, what's going on? But to me, for some reason, my brain went to, there's a woman in our camp, because that's all I could think of. But I didn't realize how far from our camp we were, So it was just weird. It was very strange. It was just like talking. I couldn't make out what it was. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. And we've heard, we've heard this before, or since then, I should say, on this other trip, the one I was telling you about with the Forest Service guys, one of our last trips, I think it was last year, this happened. We found a structure, the other one I was talking about, not the big one, but in the middle of the night, it was raining all night. And it was pretty loud. You know how rain hits your tent. It's pretty loud when it's raining hard. I woke up in the middle of the night. I didn't know this till the next morning. This is really strange. I woke up out of sleep. I'm a fairly light sleeper, and I couldn't move. I wanted to. My son was in a tent next to mine, and I wanted to. Something told me to check on him. Right. I woke up. And I was going to shout his name, say, Corey, hey, you okay? You hear anything? Or whatever. I can't remember what I was going to say. But I could not lift my head. I was fully awake. I was looking at the tent. I could hear the rain. I couldn't talk. I couldn't hardly move. And I fought it for I don't know how long. And I finally just gave up and went back to sleep. And the next morning, Corey got out of his tent and he goes, Dad, hey, I thought I heard talking outside the tent last night, and I was too afraid I was just listening. I didn't want to say anything. That same kind of talking. He said he couldn't hear what it was saying, or kind of a gibberish, but not too loud, I guess, or off in the distance. And I don't know if it was the exact same time of whatever happened to me, but I kind of put two and two together, and I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Just a weird experience. I'm thinking it might have been the same time I was trying to talk to him, or in that same time period. I don't think we've told that story yet because it's a weird one. But I've heard about infrasound. I don't know that much about it other than what I've read and heard, and I'm wondering if they might have hit me with that, possibly. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'm going to jump in on that, and that's pretty interesting because the gentleman we spoke with last episode had the exact same experience. We haven't posted that on the web, or we haven't posted that on YouTube. But he had one incident where he got out of his vehicle in an area where these creatures are, and immediately was frozen. Exact same thing. He said he couldn't even move his eyes. He had difficulty breathing. He said this went on for about 35, 40 seconds, if I recall correctly.
Wow.
Then it was, right. It's virtually identical, very, very similar to what you're talking about. His situation was broken when there was a woodpecker that started, made some noise. Now, I don't know if it was a woodpecker because he said it was around midnight. So it may have been something else.
Yeah, that is bizarre. Yeah, I thought I'd throw that out there. just a real weird deal. I've never felt that before. I've heard of sleep paralysis and that kind of thing, but I've never had sleep paralysis before, and I can't imagine the first time I'd have it would be out camping. I guess it's possible, but and then Corey came out of the tent that morning with that story of hearing the talking, and I can't remember if he said he heard footsteps and talking, but I know he said he heard talking. He thought he heard talking in the middle of the night. So that kind of goes back to the talking I heard. It's the same exact area. So I guess it's just a great active area.
Now, is he the one that we're going to bring on the show today?
Yeah. I was hoping he's got some stories and stuff too, and he's a big part of our.
Is he nearby where you can ask him?
Yeah, he's right here. He's right here.
Okay. Yeah, let's see if we can find out if that was get his side of what was going on.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great call. I'll hand him the phone here. Hi there. How's it going?
Hey, Corey. Real good. So you probably heard your dad talking. Fill us in a little bit on that situation where you heard some talking, and let's hear.
Yeah, it was really strange, man. And I'm the type of guy. I'll admit it, man. I'm scared to death of bears, things of that nature. When we go out remote, I've heard the grizzly man audio, and even with protection, man, I'm terrified, especially in the middle of the night when you hear noises like that. So it kind of froze me when I heard the talking, and I didn't check my phone to see what time it was or anything. It was kind of just one of those things where my heart started pounding really fast, and I didn't want to make any noise, and so I just sat there and listened. But it was pretty brief, but it was definitely like some type of mumbling off in the distance, and I didn't say anything because I kind of wanted to just listen, and maybe kind of out of fear too, but also just kind of curiosity. I wish I would have grabbed my phone and threw on the video or something to see if I could capture it, but it was pretty brief. And for some reason I woke up, it wasn't like the talking woke me up. I just, sometimes you just wake up in the middle of the night.
Right.
So I was kind of just sitting there and then heard it.
Did you experience the same thing your dad experienced, where you're kind of frozen?
I didn't. Not how he described it. Just kind of frozen, like, when your heart starts pounding really fast. You're like, oh my God, what is that? But not like actually physically frozen. I could have said something, but.
And when did this happen?
I like I said, I wish I would have checked my phone to see what time it was. If I had to guess, it was probably maybe 2 or 3 in the morning. Okay.
And the other question I wanted to know was this recent or a couple of years ago, or what's the time frame?
It was a couple of years ago. Last year. So yeah, it was pretty recent. Last summer.
Okay.
Well, what's crazy about that trip, I mean, that was the only really experience I had on that trip. Besides, for some reason, that camp, the area we were staying, gave me just the most eerie feeling. Where we camped, and then there's like almost like a little bit of woods that before you get to the creek, you have to walk down to the creek. For whatever reason, when it got dark, man, that whole wooded area, it's kind of where we found the structure area too. But it just felt kind of eerie, Like, I don't know, something kind of felt like being watched a couple times, but we have the big, powerful flashlights and never saw anything, but just kind of gave
that was kind of the question I had
that before.
Right. That was kind of the question I had was, what was it that was creepy? Was it quiet?
I mean, not really quiet just because it was raining and stuff, but just kind of felt, at least for me, I kind of felt like I was being watched a couple of times, and now I can't really speak for my dad, but just kind of gave me an eerie vibe. And we've had that, I've had that eerie vibe too, actually one more time back at the spot where we found just the most recent structure. there's Huff Lake that's in between. You have to hike a little ways to actually get to Huff Lake. It gets really boggy. But the first time we stayed there, I had this really weird, creeped out feeling of the woods in between Huff Lake and our camp. Can't really explain that or anything. We didn't have anything happen, but I do believe in a sixth sense and kind of trust your gut. If something feels off, something probably is off. But
yeah, hard to put your finger on it, but it's something doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Let me just pause and just ask a question. If you had to guess, how tall or big do you think that the sound that you heard from the creature was? I mean, like, how big was this creature?
It's really hard to say because it was raining and loud, and I could give you an area where I thought it would have been, and it would have been in the direction of that wooded area in between the creek and our camp. It was so hard to tell because the rain was just pelting our tents. But it was loud. I mean, I heard it. It wasn't like, oh, maybe I heard something. It was like, some type of gibberish talking. And it wasn't close enough to my tent where I could give like a,
Right. Yeah. And it was not from a baboon or a small creature. It was from a loud creature, a huge creature, right? Yeah.
For sure, yeah. It was definitely, I've never heard it before in the woods. It just sounded like gibberish. Like, that's really the only way I could describe it. And it was pretty brief, but it definitely got my heart racing, and I was like, oh my gosh, what the heck is that? But another...
Hey, Nate, I got a quick question. I'm going to jump in here real fast. So you said this, for you, hearing the gibberish was perhaps around 1 or 2 in the morning. Nate, do you think that was maybe the same time frame when you experienced that sleep or the paralysis?
I'm sorry, Tom. He handed me the phone a little late there. Can you repeat that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, the question I had was, so Corey was thinking this was around 1 or 2 in the morning when he heard the mumbling, the gibberish. Yep. And does that kind of correspond to maybe the same time that you're experiencing the paralysis?
Yes, I would say yes. It could have been. That's what I assumed, that it might have been the exact same time, possibly, or right around that time.
Despite your best efforts,
just putting 2 and 2 together. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I was going to say, despite your best efforts in that state of paralysis, you don't think you could have broken free? You couldn't force yourself?
I couldn't, Tom. I couldn't. I tried. It drives me nuts. Because if something was really wrong, but at some point I was tired, obviously, in the middle of the night. At some point I just gave up. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I said, okay, I didn't hear anything crazy, at that point. I'm just like, I'm going back to sleep. So yeah, I could not talk. I wanted to shout out just to check on Corey. I just couldn't. I couldn't talk. I couldn't move. I was just frozen. Yeah, I'm not kidding you. I mean, I swear I wouldn't make that up.
No, I believe it. I'm just getting the details.
Yeah.
Breathing, was breathing okay? You could breathe, but
yeah. I think my heart was racing. I think I could breathe fine and stuff. I'm sure my heart was racing a little bit. Just a weird, like I said, I've never had sleep paralysis before that I could ever remember. And it was just so weird. Like I knew I was awake. I just could not lift my head up to talk. I couldn't speak. And I don't know how long it was. I don't think it was very long, but I just finally, after not hearing anything major, I guess I just decided just to lay my head back down, and I went back to sleep. But never experienced that before. And to me, it's really weird. So it's kind of hard to tell this story. Like I said, I don't think I've told that story before because it's so kind of out there. People, you never know how people are going to react. But
and the reason I find it interesting, I think we all find it interesting, is repeatability corroboration with, like I said, the other gentleman that we spoke with on the previous episode that, again, is yet to be posted.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I just find it interesting. We're getting the same experience. And he's on the East Coast, by the way, and you're on the West Coast. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, definitely weird. I don't know how else to explain it. That's the best way I could explain it. Just could not move.
Do you think you had the ability to could you move your eyes?
Yeah, I think I could. Because I remember, I might even move my head a little bit, because I just remember trying to, when you wake up out of a sleep, your direction might be a little messed up. I just remember trying to realize where Corey was in comparison to where I was in my tent, So I knew he was behind my head, so I kind of remember like tilting my head back, but I couldn't talk. So I may have been able to move a little bit, but I just couldn't. I guess the not being able to talk was the weirdest thing for me, not being able to get any words out. Like, that's a weird feeling.
I'm going to ask Will. Will, you have a friend who's an MD, and he's kind of a high-level guy who's, he's done cancer research. He's a medical person. It'd be interesting if we could shoot a question to him and say, are we talking like a pinched sciatic nerve, or what are we talking here? What conditions might cause this? Anyway, that was just a question I'm just posted for Will. If you could, maybe we could ask your MD friend, under what conditions, where you'd experience this type of paralysis.
Yeah, I'll run it by him and see what he has to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, I've heard about the infrasound and stuff. Never, up to that point, never experienced that. So that's the only thing I could think of. And being a spot where we know they're at, it makes sense, I guess.
Well, that and the fact that it seems to have occurred about the same time that your son was hearing of the noises. I mean, you just kind of connect the dots. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, true. So yeah, great area there. We try to go there once or twice a year. And there's another group here locally that goes there, and they have a lot of success there too. So really fortunate to have some good spots to go.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just about to ask, like, what are the other areas around there? I mean, do people believe in the subject, or what's your experience around there?
Yeah, I would say so. We're up here in the Northwest, the Pacific Northwest, and I mean, it's pretty accepted by most people, I think. There's always skeptics, obviously, but there's some other groups up here, and it's just, we've got some remote mountains that we can get to, and within 2 hours of us. And like I said, I just feel real lucky that we live here, where we don't have to drive hours and hours to get somewhere to go out and investigate. We just love it. We, the thing I always tell people is, when you have an experience, a major experience that you can't explain away, you can't debunk it. We've still never seen one, but we've had a ton of experiences with them. I've had a rock thrown at us in the ancient cedar forest up kind of where that we were talking about Huff Lake and where we found that structure. I can tell you that story if you'd like, but until you have an experience, it kind of hooks you. It sucks you in. At least it did for us. I was hooked 100%. The very first time we went out, we had a rock thrown at us in the middle of the night, and then we heard a giant crash in the middle of the deep, dark forest. So at that point, I was hooked. We kind of just went out on a whim and didn't know what we were doing at all. First time out, but that was it. We were hooked.
That is such an excellent point, because I think that a lot of people, they probably know that this creature exists, but if they don't get that warning sign, like a rock being thrown at them, they probably are kind of skeptics. But I think that most people are really intelligent, and they understand that hey, you get a rock thrown at you, that's a sign that this creature exists.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of people, especially up here in the Northwest, are pretty open to it, but they haven't had an experience. And so, they say, well, I think it could be possible, but I've never experienced it. I talk to a lot of people like that, friends, and even some close friends. That I have a hunter friend that spends countless hours in the woods every year. He runs dogs, trees, cougars, and bear. I mean, this guy's legit. He's actually a hunting guide, and he's never had an experience. And it just blows me away. A guy like that spends that much time in the woods and never has an experience. And then, our guys, we go out, of course we know where to go, but honest to God, we have experiences probably 75% of the time we go out. And I wonder if there's something to be said about being open to it. I've always felt like, and this may sound weird, but I think I'm a little sensitive. We lived in a house where, we saw ghosts for about 10 years, and I'm not trying to go off subject here, but I wonder if there's something to being sensitive and being open to it, to where you just are more likely to have an experience. I know there's the guys that they get lucky and one runs across the road and they actually see one, but then that's it for the rest of their lives. Whereas
I'm going to jump in.
Seen. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
So your buddy who's a guide, but he goes out with dogs, right? He goes out with a pack of dogs. Does he go out with a group of people, or? Well,
he's not always doing that. That's one thing he does, but he elk hunts. So when you're elk hunting, you're super stealthy, and I think he's by himself a lot. So I mean, yeah, he does both. So he'd be by himself a lot of the time, but then he also runs dogs. But it blows me away that a guy like that. He was one of the first guys I ever asked. I said, "Hey, have you ever?" Has anything weird ever happened to you when you're in the middle of the woods? And, he didn't know what I was talking about. He's like, no, not, I'm like Bigfoot, you finally just say the word, and he's like, no, man, I never, nothing like that. And to me,
is he skeptical, or do you think he's open?
No, he says he believes, but he's just never had an experience. And so to me, it's strange. Is it just by chance that we're having all these experiences and have never seen one? And a guy like that has never had an experience and never seen one. It's really weird to me. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that are in the woods, and I can't explain it either. I've got family members that are, or they're not now, but he was years ago. He was, logger. Actually, a few of the family members have worked in the forest, and they've never seen him. Now, I attribute that to when you're logging, you're making a lot of ruckus, and you're there with a bunch of people. But there have been loggers who have seen him as well. So yeah, it's a hit and miss. True. I don't know.
Another thought I just had, Tom, is maybe it has to do with letting them know that they're there. Like if you do maybe a call, or let's say you do a wood knock or something, maybe you draw them in and they realize that they're there. So that could be part of it too. I don't know.
It could be, but then you also have the people that just pure dumb luck. They stumble on these things. So I think it's it's still kind of an open question at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about it. So yeah. We had another big encounter I could talk about. It was our hunting camp encounter. It happened a couple of years ago, and it was pretty intense.
Okay, let's hear about it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think I might have told you a little, Tom, when we talked, but I go hunting with my buddy Rob every year. We do a week-long hunting camp, third week of October. And we spend about 8 days, Saturday to Saturday, up there. And we'd really never had any, and I'm hunting. Of course, Bigfoot's always in the back of my mind, but I'm not, when I'm hunting, I'm not really honestly thinking about it a whole lot. But we never had anything weird, and this is kind of in the heart of all this same area. It's in the Selkirks, northeastern Washington. But like I said, we never had an experience there before. But this particular year, 2 years ago, we arrived. Everything was normal. And I don't know if I think it was probably the first night I did a couple knocks and a scream. It's kind of something I do when I get into an area, just to see if I get something, because I'm into it. And nothing happened that night. So we went on like normal. And the second day, we got back from hunting, and we were hearing what sounded like a moaning across the field in this tree line that was opposite of where our camp was. And just sounded odd. I don't even know if I thought Bigfoot right away. It was just kind of an odd sound and something I never heard before. And by the way, my buddy Rob he was open to it, but he was a skeptic at this point. He'd never had an experience or anything. And so I think the third day, we got back to camp, and we let's see, I think it was lunchtime. We got back during the day for lunch, and we pulled into this little entrance to our camp, and there was a sapling laid across the entrance to our camp. Pretty good sized sapling, probably 15 feet tall, probably, I'm guessing, maybe 3 inches at the base. And it was laid across the entrance to our camp, and we pulled up, and I stopped the wheeler, and I remember Rob said, "That wasn't there. What the hell's that? What's that doing there?" And by the way, we were the only ones up there. We hadn't seen any other hunters, since we'd gotten there. And so we jumped out of the wheeler, and I went over to the sapling, and I picked it up. It had a big root ball on it. I think I sent you these pictures too, Tom. I hope you got them. But
yes.
The minute I picked it up, a bunch of dirt fell off of it. I mean, it was a big, fresh root ball. And, it was pretty heavy too. It was a good sized sapling. And we're just like, at this point, it's getting a little weird. It's like, okay, so you try to debunk it. You're looking around like, could someone have put this here, or did someone back in here and hit a little tree? And, so we look around, we looked in the wood line. We spent quite a bit of time looking around to see where this thing came from. We could never find the hole in the ground where it came from. And it looked like it was pulled out of the ground like a carrot. It still had all the dirt, the fresh dirt on it, the roots hanging out. And so that was it was so bizarre. And there was some other sticks laid across the entrance too. And it was kind of funny. I remember kind of chuckling about it. And I think I was thinking, I always kind of go to Bigfoot at some point, and I'm thinking, wow, wonder if Bigfoot did this. And we're kind of chuckling, thinking, oh, this ain't going to keep us out of our camp, this little sapling laid across the entrance. And so we took some pictures of it, documented it. And the story keeps going. So we, the next day, I think I'm 4 days in now, we get back after dark. Of course, we always come back after dark from hunting. We pulled into the camp, and this big tree. I mean, this thing is big, probably, good 20, 25 foot fresh tree, green, super green pine tree. Keep in mind, no wind, no storm, nothing that day. This thing was pushed over in our camp, right in the middle of our camp. It almost hit our camp table. It was that close. And, after seeing that sapling the day before, our eyes went right to that tree, and we're like, what the hell? And it was dark. We took some pictures, looked at it. It was, like I said, a big fresh tree snapped off right at the base of the ground, which is really strange. And so the next morning we started hearing wood knocks that night off in the distance. And then it got to where there'd be one across that one tree line, and then one behind our tents in our tree line, like they were knocking at each other. And I thought I'd just mention that ramps up also in this story. So the next morning we woke up, we looked at that tree, we took more pictures of the tree, and sure enough, this thing was just, if you see the pictures, it was snapped off at the dirt. And it would have taken tremendous force to do this. Just crazy. And you saw those pictures, Tom?
Yes, I did. I did see the pictures, and we're going to post those on the web. So
okay.
But real quick, I had a question on the tree knocks. Any chance that because we've had discussions about whether they actually pick up a piece of wood and do a tree knock, or whether they're doing a very, very loud, like a tongue popping.
Oh, I gotcha.
What are your thoughts? Just something to mull over, whether you think that may have been a possibility or not.
Here's the thing. I can tell you, Tom, they at first they were off in the distance. That it was like I want to say the third or fourth night the knocks started. And every night after that, they ramped up and got louder and closer. And at one point, they were, towards the end of the week, they were right behind our tent. And I mean, these were loud. So if they're popping their tongue, boy, I can't imagine it being that loud. But I've heard that some people think maybe they clap or something too, but I don't know. I really don't know. But all I know is they were super, super loud. And so after the two trees, like I said, every night the tree knocks ramped up where they'd be waking us up in the middle of the night. And it was just crazy. It got more intense every night. And at some point in there midweek, we put up some game cams. We put one behind our tent and then one in the middle of camp. Actually, I got to back up. We put those up before the big tree was pushed over. And I remember Rob saying, "Hey, we got the game cams up. Let's check them." Because it should have got that tree that was pushed over. And this is going to sound bizarre, but the one in the middle of the camp, we went to check it, and there was a dead moth placed over the lens backwards, and it was stuck to it. So I don't know how to explain that, but so it didn't get any of the pictures because the moth was right over the eye of the camera.
Right.
And then the one.
And what about just before the moth? Were you able to look at the video and see when the moth showed up?
No, it did. They did take some pictures before that.
Right.
But all of a sudden, it was just blank. I think there were white pictures, so that must have been the moth over the lens.
Because that's a question everybody's going to want to know is, did you see something?
No. There was nothing in between there. No.
Yeah.
And then the weird thing is, Tom, is the one behind the tent also malfunctioned. It was taking some pictures the first day, I think. We were moving around. And the other one, it was like blank white pictures too. So I don't know how to explain that, but that's a fact. Both the cameras didn't work. And I've heard stories, of course, that they mess with the cameras somehow or whatever. So I just thought I'd mention that. So we didn't get any pictures, anything good. But very strange on the cameras. So let's see, where was I? About 4 nights in. So I want to say, it's like I said, the tree knocks got closer and louder, and it got to a point where we just weren't sleeping that good. We weren't getting a lot of sleep. We were getting nervous, getting a little stressed out. And I think it was about the 5th night, I woke up in the middle of the night and I heard a deep growl, what I thought was a growl. And I woke up and, the first time I thought, okay, did I just hear that? It sounded like a growl. And I was awake, and then it did it again, a real deep, low growl, kind of right by my head, my corner of the tent. And I woke Rob up. I'm like, Rob, there's something growling outside the tent. And he didn't hear the first two, but he woke up, and it happened 2 more times. So he heard the 2 other growls. And we were like, what the heck are we going to do? This is crazy. And so we decided to, we sat there quiet. We whispered a little bit and said, okay, well, let's get our clothes on and our pants on, and we're going to storm out of the tent and see what the hell this is. We kind of did the 1, 2, 3, zip the tent up and run out. And of course we had our weapons, and there was nothing, Tom. There was we didn't hear anything running away. We didn't hear footsteps, but there was a loud growl right outside our tent. And that, like I said, I think that was the 5th or 6th night that happened. So basically, I hope I'm relaying the story right, but I mean, it's just every night got more intense. And my buddy was pretty freaked out about it. Like I said, he was a skeptic, and he couldn't believe it. And so basically we got to, I don't know, must have been the I think it was the sixth night, and we talked. This was the night after the growls, and we were kind of talking like, okay, what are we going to do tonight? We're going to sleep in our clothes. We both had our guns on our chests. I'd like to think that we're fairly tough in the woods. We have guns and plenty of ammo, but after all this stuff with the trees, the wood knocks, and the growl, we were pretty stressed out. And so luckily my father has a lake place on Priest Lake, which is only about 25 minutes from where this is. And we kind of bowed out the last night. We said, we got to get some sleep. It was getting ridiculous. We were so tired and stressed out. But before we left, Rob, we had a lot of mice in camp that week. So we'd always make sure to zip up our tent all the way so mice didn't get in the tent. And he put his lantern on low and set it in the tent. We have a big canvas tent, plenty of room to get up and walk around. And put his lantern on low, and we packed up and left for the cabin. Next morning we got back. The tent was zipped up about, I'd say 6 to 8 inches, like something was messing with the zipper. Tried to get in there.
Yeah, you sent a picture of that. So you felt like there was, in summary, your time at this camping, there was a escalation of activity.
Big time. There was a pressure. Whatever was there wanted us to leave, and it got worse every night. Every day, it got worse. Starting at about day 3 when that sapling was placed across the entrance. Yeah, and like I said, my buddy, he was pretty freaked out. He couldn't believe it. Even me knowing what I know about Bigfoot, I was still shocked because I'd never had an experience like that where, it was just so odd running out of the tent, not hearing anything run away, not seeing anything. We have powerful flashlights. Looking around now, unfortunately, we didn't see any tracks either because the dirt was really hard, packed down, like a real hard dirt. So we couldn't pick up any tracks or anything. But I don't know. Just it was stressful. We definitely felt the pressure to leave, and like I said, it got worse every day.
Hey, let me just ask real quick. Were you able to see it, and could you describe its face?
No, we didn't. That's the thing. We didn't see it. We never saw it. That's the bizarre thing. We ran out of the tent after the growls, and we had our flashlights. I mean, we have big, powerful flashlights, 1,500 lumen flashlights. And I mean, I'm sure it took us a minute or two to get out of the tent, get our pants on, and get out. So it could have moved back. But we never saw it. That was the bizarre thing. You'd think, and of course, you're thinking bear too at some point, a bear growling outside the tent. So you'd hear a bear though. I would assume you'd hear a bear running away. They're kind of big and clumsy, but because there's a lot of sticks and stuff lying around, you'd think you'd hear something. But yeah, we never heard anything run away, and the tree knocks right behind the tent were incredibly loud. And then I think one of those nights, I don't know if it was one of the last 2 nights, Rob said that something drug a stick around his side of the tent, like pressing on the tent. I forgot to mention that. But, if I don't tell that, he'll be mad because I always forget to tell that part of the story. So just, long story short, just some very, very weird things. And like I said, we felt pressured the whole time. Once it all started, it got worse every day.
We're going to wrap it up pretty quick, but just before we do, give us a little bit of detail. What was the deal? Rob said there's a stick pressing up against the tent.
I always forget to tell this, but I think it was the night before the growl happened. He said he didn't wake me up. He was just laying there listening. He said that something took a stick and pressed in on the tent and then rubbed it all the way across the tent, is what he said he thought. And he just laid there and listened to it. Yeah. So that was one little detail I forgot to tell you guys. I thought I'd throw it in there. I know I'm kind of out of order on some of this, but So that was our hunting camp account. That was 2 years ago. Pretty crazy. And I've got the pictures and stuff. So unfortunately we didn't see it. Again, more experiences and we didn't see one.
Fellas,
but
I hate to break in, but we're going to have to wrap up. We're at our time. Thank you so much for the information. Great information. And we're going to keep in touch with you fellas, too.
Well, we really appreciate you guys having us. We really do. It's an honor to be on your show.
Much appreciated. And Brian,
All
Tom,
right.
anything final before we wrap this section up?
No, just want to say again, thank you so much for your time.
It's a lot of info to try to get in. Yeah, you're welcome.
Nate,
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Yeah, Nate, Corey, thank you guys, and stay in touch. Keep us updated.
All right.
Yeah,
we will do that.
Great work there, fellas. We appreciate hearing from you.
We'll keep in touch with you guys. Thank you again.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Creek Devil. We have a very special guest today. A very good friend of mine from back in our PCSIT, that was the Pacific Coast Sasquatch Investigation Team days from the 80s and 90s in the Vancouver, Portland area. And Carol was our member of the board of directors. She was our director of public relations. Carol, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Very nice to get to talk to you after all this time.
Absolutely. It's been too long. So
yes,
I'm sure Tom is loaded with questions. So Tom, I'm going to let you kick this off, and I'll add in things as need be, and Carol's going to provide some very interesting things. She was oftentimes...
Well, I sure hope so.
You were oftentimes at the Yakult investigation we did for over 9 months, and a number of other things that we were involved in. So Tom, I'm going to let you go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thanks. Well, hi, Carol. How you doing?
Oh, very well, thanks.
Good. And you know what? I'm very interested in the Haunted Valley, the Yakult situation. And you and I chatted about that. But you know what? My first question is, Will filled me in on an interesting detail. And that is, Dawn, and you were, I think, at the Yakult there. And apparently he was a skeptic. And one of these things stepped across and walked across the road. Do you remember that? And can you tell us a little bit give us some details on that?
That must have been in the evening. I don't remember. I don't remember it being during the interview, but I think much later it happened when we used to go up there quite often, which was Parcel Road, in Yakult. And in the evening, a couple of times we were up there just checking out the area, and we saw like something moving in the distance, and it had eyes kind of shining in the early dusk evening, and it didn't look like any other kind of animal you might know, and he just felt that that's what we were looking at, and I think we probably were, since they were in and out of there all summer.
I remember, Carol, that I came up there, it was maybe 30 minutes after you and Don, you were waiting. Remember, we used to often have we'd park outside the Goldhammer driveway on the road there, as to not intrude on their privacy. And I remember you guys telling me that you had sandwiches and things in a cooler in the back seat, and I think Don wanted something, and you turned around, and I remember Don telling me this. He says, Carol turned around to get something out of the cooler, and this thing walked right out across the road in front of our car. He says, I didn't believe it and there it was.
Well, it's been a while, and I don't remember that incident exactly the way you're describing it to me, but gosh, I wish that had happened. I don't know.
Well, he pulled me off the side, and he says, I didn't believe in this stuff until I saw that, and there it was. He says, Carol didn't see it, but I saw it.
Oh, well, and knowing him, he didn't want to tell me because I missed it. He didn't know.
Probably.
No, and I'd have been very disappointed. That's the best I can say about it. I don't know. We were always hoping. That was why I was involved in the group primarily. I wanted to see one. That was my main goal. And I thought I had a pretty good chance. Since there were, we figured 4 of them out there.
Yeah. You remember?
Yeah.
Were you guys? Oh, you guys weren't with me the very first time I went there. The first time I went there was just 3 days after that initial sighting happened with Nick.
Oh.
And I talked to the family, and listeners are familiar with this, that I talked to them. I knew because they published the address in the newspaper. It was on the front page of the Columbia newspaper on June 10th of, that was 1989.
Oh.
And
it was June 10th. I was wondering when they had done that.
yeah, so
I remember that. Brenda was upset about that.
They were all pretty upset, yeah. So I went out there and talked to them, knowing that, all kinds of people would have been there. And there were all kinds of people went there, and people came and left, and there was nobody there when I got there. But so I asked them if it was okay if I talked to them, and they said sure. So we talked about it. And when Nick talked about the creature's behavior, I got curious. I thought, well, it was doing this for a reason. It was trying to keep him away from those lower fields. So I asked them if they'd take me down there, and they said sure. So we went down, and there was a big cottonwood tree in that back field that was down. And under the base of it, there were juvenile tracks, 2 different sets in the dirt. So I said, well, we know they're 2 juveniles. We know there's an adult. And I said, there's probably a female, so keep your eyes open. And then we did determine later, because they did see the female one night, that there were 4 of them in that location.
Oh, yeah. And I remember little Johnny, he was 4, and he had told Nick, the person that had initially seen the first adult, that he had seen the big monkey with his 2 boys out there. Remember that?
I always remember that. And that's fascinating. I was telling Tom before we got started, I said, nobody knew about the 2 juveniles except me and the adults when we went there. And for the little boys to say that, and I remember he was actually telling you and pointing out in the field, he saw the big monkey and these 2 boys playing out there.
Nick used to say he had quite a bit to say sometimes when they were alone.
Yeah.
So they played out there all the time. I'm sure they saw a lot, and it was just a matter of fact, according to him. This big monkey and his 2 boys, that was it. He'd seen them. So they were really cute kids.
Well, and Carol, this situation, this unique situation, everything about it is different. It was sound like it was very benign. It was a situation where I don't think that it was threatening, but I don't know. I wasn't there. Can either one of you kind of explain? Just give me your perspective on that.
Well, the situation of being benign, or were people feeling threatened? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, it was a situation where, if you got a little boy, a 4-year-old boy, who's watching the big monkey in the field playing with 2 younger monkeys, right? And they can see him, obviously, if you can see them, and they didn't snatch him.
We don't know for sure, but I know that Brenda and her husband didn't seem to be too concerned about it. The children played outside all the time, and they were always out and about when we arrived. So I don't think anybody really felt threatened about it, or I would have been a little more concerned, I think, but that was just more my nature. But to them, they just considered it a fortunate event that happened. They got to see, and they just kind of went on with their lives after that. With a lot of people coming in and out.
There was only one incident that I recall where anybody felt, I guess, fear or threat, and that was Tanya, Nick's 15-year-old sister. You remember everybody went to the movies or something that night, so Tanya didn't go, and she had one of her friends staying there. And the story was they went out to see the horse. And
they went out to get oats for the horse.
Right, and they had that big light out there by the barn, and this thing came walking up, and at first they thought it was a person, and it wasn't a person, and they went screaming to the house, and the creature followed them. And they actually tore the screen door off one of its hinges, trying to get in the house.
Oh, wow, I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah, and the thing was outside staring in the windows at them, and they grabbed pots and pans and were screaming and banging the pots and pans, trying to scare it away.
Yes.
And eventually just kind of, I guess, got bored and walked off. But Whether it was menacing or not, I don't know. It did follow him up there, and they seemed to be scared. It didn't seem to be trying to catch him or anything.
Yeah. Well, I can remember that we always referred to that one as Junior. Remember, he wasn't afraid of us, for sure.
Yeah, that was.
And
I felt that
he was kind of hanging around.
Kind of a kind of almost adult, but not quite.
Right. If he'd have been an adult, I think he would have been more afraid. He just didn't act like he was afraid at all. And but I remember the girls were very scared, and I remember that it took 2 weeks to be able to get to interview the girl that walked down to the barn for the oats for the horse. Remember, she went to her house, and that was the last we saw of her till 2 weeks later.
Do you remember how the interview went? Because I don't recall that one.
Well, I wasn't there at the time, so I had heard that the interview had been done afterwards, and I don't remember. I was thinking that it had been you that had done the interview. Am I wrong?
You know, it might have been me, and I just don't remember. I've interviewed so many people over the years, and there were so many there in that area. You know, there was a lot. I know
it, and remember the girl also, the goat hammer's daughter, was there as well, and she may have been in the interview too because they were together at that when that happened. I remember I heard about it afterwards, and the goat hammer girl had said to. What was her name? The other girl? I can't remember now.
I want to say Amy, but I know Tanya was the Goldhammer daughter, and I think it was something like.
Oh, in the interview. Yeah.
It might have been something like Amy. I can't remember.
I remember the circumstances because at the time I thought, oh my goodness, they had left the two girls there with the two young boys, the 2-year-old and the 4-year-old, and and let's see, they had said to each other, let's go get the horse. They walked down to the barn. One of the girls walked down to the barn for the oats, and the other girl headed for the horse. And that was when she saw it standing under the light. I remember that detail. She saw it standing under the light, and it was so big it just scared her to death. And she turned around and ran back. That's what happened, from what I remember. And then they both hid in the house, and you're right, it came up to the back glass door area, and where they had that sliding glass door, and they were using pots and pans to scare it away, and they couldn't. I mean, it was hard. He wouldn't leave.
Yeah, I just remember
that was funny. I remember that.
I remember talking about tearing it. I remember seeing the door hanging there. They yanked it so hard, the screen door, and ripped it off the hinges.
Oh,
and it was by the sliders there, and they were terrified.
Yeah, I know they were. Well, like I said, it took 2 weeks to be able to get the other girl interviewed. Remember, she just didn't want to have anything to do with it after that.
Oh yeah, and there were plenty of them around in that area like that where people just wouldn't talk.
I could understand it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it took her a while, and she was a little nervous anyway about the whole idea of them being out there. And then when she actually got to see one, that was not good for her. Oh,
Carol.
But yeah, was. Go ahead.
Sorry, guys. I was going to ask about one of the incidents. Was there was a fire station in Colt, and across the street was a like a little forest or a miniature thicket or something.
Wooded area.
Okay, a wooded area. And what was the situation with that?
Well, I was told, I think by Will, or one of the other groups in our member organization, that one of the kids was crossing through that wooded area to school, which they often did in that neighborhood, and they came upon one standing right in the middle of this wooded area. Scared them. I think it was two. There were two of them, now that I think about it, and it scared them to death. They were on their way to school. It was really early in the morning. And I guess that it had happened occasionally before that, so it seemed to be a favorite place for them to stand, or at least one of them. Maybe not all of them, but
I'll tell you what, though.
Someone was in there.
There was an incident down in that very same location right near the end of the time the creatures were there, where I took some of the newer members we had with me in there one night. And I remember it was raining, and we had flashlights and went in there just to check the spot, and got surrounded by the group of these things. It was very unnerving. I mean, all we could see with the flashlights we had was the eye shine, but they were all on both sides of us. So we very, very quickly and carefully got out of that situation. But they did seem to frequent that stand of timber.
Yeah. It was a nice private area, and it was a shortcut for the kids, that lived on the other side. It was just, I just wish I could have been there, just to see it. How exciting!
Will, how tall were and I know the listeners are going to kind of wonder this, because I certainly am. So you're looking around at the flashlights, you see eyes. Are they bigger than normal? That's a rhetorical question.
Oh, yeah, they were big. And
height, elevation-wise, what do you think?
They were up probably around 7 feet.
Okay.
Very, very bright, kind of amber colored. You would see them
pretty
flash.
Big.
You'd see them blink occasionally and move their heads. So it was, they were right there. It was an underwear changing moment, we'll put it that way.
And they're on both sides of you? They
on both sides, yeah.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It was a ham sandwich moment. Don't be the ham sandwich. Carol, there is an incident, one of my favorite ones that happened up there, and I think you and Don and myself were there this evening when the two people pulled up, and we thought it was Ron Madler coming up, and it wasn't. It was a couple in a blue Porsche, a man and a woman. And do you remember that incident?
Vaguely. Is this now? How long was it into the summer?
It was probably midsummer. They got out, they had their little packs, and they started climbing over the fence going up the hill, because we'd found tracks on that hill before. And I said, you probably don't want to do that. And the guy said, well, I'm a biologist. I know what I'm doing. And off they went in the dark up that hill. And I looked at you guys and I said, they'll be back in about 20 minutes. And sure enough, right about 20 minutes later, we see these flashlights bobbing furiously as these people are running down this hill. And they about killed themselves trying to get over that barbed wire fence. And three of us are just standing there looking at them. And the guy jumps in the car, he fires it up. The woman's hanging halfway out the car with the door, and the guy's peeling out. And they took off. And Don looks over and he says, you hit that right on the money.
That's right.
I'd love to have talked to those folks and say, so, did you see something up there?
Yeah, I wonder if they really did.
Carol, do you remember how many times we'd hear screams coming from that hilltop, coming down in the valley?
Well, you know what? I didn't hear a lot, to be honest, but Don and I went up there. It was kind of towards the end of the summer. You weren't around at that time. And we went up, and it was right at the end of summer. I'd say maybe in October, something like that. And we've gone up there with a white Subaru and sat right side of Goldhammer's house. And we were always invited there, so we just, the group. So we just went up there and sat this one night. We were right in line where the creek comes under the road area. I was telling Tom about this. And so we're sitting there visiting, and then all of a sudden, this high-pitched coyote sound. It was just piercing. I mean, it sounded like a coyote, but you knew it wasn't because it was just piercing. It was coming from our left side. And then every dog in the valley started howling. It was an amazing sound. And Nick came running out of the house. Young Nick came running out of the house. He said, "Did you hear it? Did you hear it?" Well, I was just glad he was there just to verify it, because honestly, it was really something. But then I realized later on when I went up there that we were sitting right there in its path. You know how they used to come down that hill area around that barn,
right,
and cross the road, and then right along the creek and go into the timber. We were sitting right there, and it never occurred to me at the time that that's why he gave out that blood-curdling, coyote sound to get rid of us. That's what I think.
I found some pictures recently from back then, and this made me think of this. They used to come down through that area you were just talking about.
Yes.
Almost nightly.
Yes.
And sometimes they would sound like, there was one time it sounded like a group of horses running. It's down through those lower fields. And I remember us all standing around thinking, what in the world? That's the problem. There were different people there oftentimes, you know. So I know you and Don went there during the daytime with me right after that. And you remember the big flattened spots down in the hayfields? Because you're
that Brenda called us for.
Right, you're in the pictures.
Yes. Oh my God, that was probably the most informative thing I'd ever seen, and it was just I couldn't believe it when we. Brenda called you one day, and she said that she'd been riding her horse, and she said, I found a place where they've been sleeping. You remember? Yeah. And so anyway, so you called us. We came up, and we all went down in the field and had our cameras, thank goodness. And I think we counted like 9 to 11 places where they had been bedding down there, remember? And they were identical.
Yeah.
They were scooped out, and they were identical, and they were so big. I remember the one I stood in the middle of, I could put my arms out and then just reach the edges. It was so wide.
Yeah, one of the pictures you
actually had your arms out. It was the most phenomenal thing. It was phenomenal, really. I was so happy I got to see that. And we took pictures. We did. I've got them here somewhere. Yeah.
Oh, I found a few. I don't have that many anymore. I lost a lot of my stuff years ago, but... And there were, of course, lots of incidents that happened there. There was one time, I don't know if you were there, but I used to, when I'd spend the night up there, after daylight, I'd go down through the field and through that one trail. And one morning I found, you remember back then, of course, the trees are all big there now, but back then they were just 4 or 5 feet tall, the little saplings that were all over, little maple and Doug fir. And along that trail, there were dozens of them just pulled out of the ground. Like it was one of them was walking along, just yanking them out.
I'll be darned.
And there was one other incident I know you were there on. There was one night we went there, and I can't remember who all was there, but we split into 2 groups in the yard. And and I think you and myself and young Nick, I can't remember who else, but their dog Rusty, the German Shepherd, were walking around one side of the house, and the dog was acting really funny. And we walked. We never went beyond the fence line at night. That was sort of the boundary. You know, the fence inside the fence was our side. The other side was their side. We didn't violate that. So apparently one of them was there because as we got close, it burst through the bushes at the end of the road, and we could hear its bare feet slapping on the pavement, running away from us. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. I wasn't there at that time. That happened. I don't remember that exact incident, but well, you know, I just may not have heard the feet. I don't remember that incident. I think I would have remembered it. But we were often at the same incident, but everybody kind of saw and heard different things. You know how that was.
Oh, I know. And there was so much going on. And oftentimes we were separated. You know, part of the group would be in one area and the other part of the group would be somewhere else, and we would experience different things.
Well, you remember that one time. I know you were with me one time. And I believe Don and I know it was the couple that were from Vancouver. I believe they were with us. I'm trying to think their names now. I can't think. You know who I mean, don't you? He was a Native American. His grandpa.
Oh yeah.
He lived on the reservation down there in the south, and they had cattle there.
Was that Roy and his wife?
It wasn't Roy. It was Anita. And
Anthony.
Anita and Tony.
Yeah.
Don't ask me how I remembered that. It just popped into my head. I can't believe I remember that. Yeah, and they were there. Well, we were doing field work that day, and so we just decided to mosey on down the road. We walked right down the middle of the road through some of the houses on that highway there, Powerstove Road, and this little cat followed us. So I picked it up and we put it in the backpack with us and said we'll drop it off on our way home and or on our way back. And so we did. And I went up to the door and rapped, and the lady answered. And I thought, well, here's my chance. So I said, by the way, have you seen or heard of Bigfoot lately? You know? And she said, well, if you really want to hear them, she said, I would suggest you come up here in the fog. because they called back and forth to each other. Remember that?
Oh, I do. I had forgotten until then.
Yes, and I gave her the cat, and then she said, and the lady next door has had chickens missing. I remember that, her telling me that.
Right.
That seems to be pretty typical, of chickens missing and that.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I remember that day was kind of a fun day, and it was sort of casual, and we were just kind of walking and talking to people if we had a chance. And I remember, too, when I first got up there, when I first met you and we met there at Goathammers, you were telling me about the garden incidences. There were like 2 or 3 gardens in the area below the Goathammers. And one woman had said that she had found these large prints in her garden, and all of her radishes were gone.
And if you recall, the Goldhammers, they were from Milwaukee, so they were city people, and they bought that acreage, and they were trying their hand at a number of different things, and they had their little garden out there, and that's really kind of how this incident began, because they were picking radishes for the horse, but the horse wouldn't touch the radishes, but then the radishes would vanish, and they knew the horse wasn't eating them. So apparently radishes were on the menu for these things in that area.
Yeah. And this was a woman, I didn't get to meet her, but the one that you had told me about lived right below the Goathammers, like when you're looking down into the valley area there, and that she said that they had left big prints and all of her radishes were gone. She was pretty upset. I remember that. And there was something else about another family that lived there in the valley, too. I was just trying to remember what that was, but gosh, I can't think of it. But I do remember that one. I thought, I can understand it because I love radishes. Don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I could see them loving radishes. So, oh, that was funny. I remember when we were down there looking at the beds, we found a small area where we found bones. Do you remember that? There were like bones of maybe a small animal. We thought maybe a calf or some other small animal.
I do not remember that. I guess sometimes I need my memory jogged by other people who were there, because, there was so much. I wrote the book Haunted Valley about that 9-month investigation, and there were pieces that I couldn't remember, like that one. I'd forgotten about that one.
I can't remember all of them at all, but the more I think about it and talk about it, the more it comes back to me, But some other time, maybe if you guys want to have me on, I did an interview right at that same time I was there. I went home to see my parents and my brother, and they put me in touch with one of my brother's friends who had a sighting in the state of Pennsylvania. And almost that was going on at the same time. Do you remember that? I did an interview with him, too. His name was Otto.
Do you want to talk about that?
Well, it happened in Pennsylvania, real close to the New York state border, near Bradford and Pennsylvania. And there was this young guy. He had this job where he drove back and forth all the time, and he climbed these large electrical poles. He worked for General Electric, I believe. And so he traveled a lot at night. And he had heard about it over the radio that evening. People had been calling in saying they'd had sightings. And so anyway, he's driving home. He said he's almost home. About 5 minutes, he'd be there. And he comes to the highest point in that mountain area that you have to go over before you cross the border. And one crossed right in front of him. 3 steps, he said, went right to the other side, stopped, kind of looked, and then went down on the other side. And I was telling Tom, it was so funny because he got out at the next chance and called his mom. He said, of all people, I called my mom. I never called my mom before, but he had to tell someone, and she didn't believe him. And that hurt his feelings terribly, but, that can happen.
Did he ever, did she just not believe him till the end, or did she ever come around at some point?
No, as far as I know, I don't know, but that was just her position, and I don't know if it had anything to do with her reality, but his wife was the same way. But my brother had known him, for all of his life practically, and he said, he said that he was so shaken up by it when it happened that he couldn't think of anyone else to call but his mom. He thought, oh, my mom, I can call her. She'll get it,
Right. Everybody's going to say,
And everybody would think that, right?
It's mom. Mom knows me. Mom trusts me. I trust mom.
Sure.
And she didn't believe him.
So when I got home, he set me up an interview. So I went and got an interview with him, and I had a book with me written by Renee DeHinden, Will's friend, and I left it with him because he hadn't read a book. He didn't really know that much about him. He described it beautifully, completely and everything, and he had never written or never read anything about them. So I left that book for him. I remember that. And his wife was kind of upset with me because she spent the whole next day reading it. I remember that part.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
she was upset?
Wouldn't you? Yes, his wife was upset. I loved the book, and he had spent the next day reading it. How could he?
Right. I would have done the same thing. Absolutely. And I've read several books. So what are your thoughts about, you talked about Renee DeHinden. Have you ever met him?
Yes, I met him when he came up to Yakko. He was there, and will have to remind me because I think it was really towards the end of the summer. And from what I recall, he wasn't there at the beginning, and he brought his camper up. He was going to stay a while, and he stayed camped on the property, and so we got to visit with him and talk, and it was really great getting to meet him. He was a terrific guy. Yeah,
he was a character. He was a character.
I know, and I remember him so well, and it's hard to think he's gone, but he is. Yeah, that was great getting to meet him. And, that was really towards, late summer, wasn't it, when he came up finally?
Yeah, there wasn't much going on around there then. He sort of... I kept pestering him to come there because so much was going on, and by the time he got there, it kind of petered out.
I know it. I know. And he was glad he came, and it worked out great, but, everything was pretty much settled. They had taken off.
Yeah, they'd moved out of the area by then. Yeah, there was nothing else going on after that.
But I always believed that they were there. They loved that creek because they were always there, coming across there and following it down along the wooded area, and that they liked those crawdads that were there. That's what they were looking for. That's what I think.
There was plenty of food around there for them, that's for sure.
And from what I remember, there were a lot of crawdads, right?
There were.
People were talking about it, so I didn't see them, but that's what I was told.
Yeah, that's what everybody who lived around there said.
Mm-hmm. Right. They come early in the spring, or they come early summer, and then then they're gone. So
there was other stuff, of course, besides Yakko. With our, we had the PCSAT group at that time. There was one time, it just cracks me up, this story. I was in Grants Pass, and you and Candy, who was a part of the group then, met. I
wonder what happened to her.
There was, I think last I heard she got married and moved to Portland. I never heard from her again, but she was our part on the board of directors also. And you guys had run into somebody and called me to ask what we should do about it. I said, well, go talk to the guy, and if it's important, I'll come back. And do you remember the story?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I remember pretty much most of it.
Okay, if you don't mind telling me.
Because we thought we had a really legitimate thing going on there.
Now, this is one of those stories. Fortunately, it's a rare commodity in this topic where people would think it's reverse. But tell us the story, Carol. It's too good.
Well, he was a young guy, and he was married, and they lived in this. I think it was like a trailer court. Isn't that right? They were in a trailer court area. And anyway, they had, a Sasquatch had come onto the property, and not only once, but a couple of times. And so they had managed to see it and, catch glimpses of it as it was going in and out and so on and so forth. And so we're standing there talking to him, and pretty fascinated by the whole thing. I had my little recorder going and everything. And he said this one time it came on again. He and his wife were standing there, And he said, then a strange thing happened. He said he looked up and he saw a flying saucer hovering above us. Well, Candy and I just kind of looked at each other, and we got this look on our face like, let's get out of here, you know.
I remember there was actually more to the story. I remember you telling
probably
me.
Was. Well, you know.
This guy said that he was up cutting wood, and this thing was around watching him, and apparently it was a female. And it took an interest in him, but he said he was married because it wanted to take him for a beer.
Well, I don't remember that part
So it followed him back to the house, and you and Candy were talking to him and his wife, and one of you guys asked the wife if you saw the creature, and she says, well, no, I'm too busy looking at the UFO hanging over the edge of the house.
Okay. Well, there always seemed to be a UFO in this story, in one of his stories, because he had a lot of different stories.
Oh, did he? Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, yeah, because we had heard a couple before this last one, and we thought, well, gee, this was really interesting. We hadn't heard of anything quite such a friendly one as this, you know. But you know, Candy was a pretty serious gal too. You know, we were very serious about this subject.
Oh yeah.
And when he brought up the flying saucer, we just gave each other this, oh my God, like how could we have been suckered into this, you know?
I remember I talked to you on the phone after that, and you said, no, don't worry about it.
It was a fun experience. We stopped and had lunch there over what is that bridge where where you overlook the river?
Isn't that Bridge of the Gods?
Yeah. So that was worth it. Yeah, there was a restaurant nearby we stopped. Yeah, it's been so long since I've been up there. I mean, really, I have been up there to the property, but other than that, I haven't. Been in that area that much. A friend of mine, every now and then I want to go up there, but I don't like to go alone, so I invite someone to come. And I do have friends that like going. They don't look at me to the side or anything. They'll say, sure, I'll go, you know. So if I get a chance to, I go up. And I was up there about 2 weeks ago, and it's really the property's changed so much. You know, everything's growing up now. There's another house along Parcel Road, but the town itself still looks very similar. The original houses are still there. The fire station's still there, you know, all of that.
Hey,
so
Carol,
it's fun to go back.
Oh, I bet it is. Hey, there was another thing that was kind of a milestone, and I think this whole topic, and especially the topic for the Pacific Northwest, and that was a barbecue that was started by Will, and I think the team there, the PCSIT. Were you involved with his group at that time, and do you know anything about that?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the name.
Oh, Carol, you remember when Jack and I put that barbecue and potluck together up at Eagles Cliff?
Oh yes, the first one.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Yes, I do.
I guess Tom's asking about your thoughts on that and impressions.
I see. Yes, it was a great experience. That was one of two potlucks we had. I believe there were only two. And it was great for me because people had come from all over, and I got to talk to some people that had experiences, and they'd never really told anyone before. And one in particular, I remember about this. His wife was standing with him at the time when he told me that he and a friend had gone hunting, and it was in the Northwest Woods, not too far from there. And they had come across this clearing. They were out hunting. And lo and behold, just as they were ready to enter it, two of these Sasquatch were walking across the field together, just quietly walking together and away from them. And he said that he was just amazed. They stood there and watched it the whole time till they crossed to the other side. And he said, we could have shot him if we'd wanted to, but he said we just couldn't bring ourselves to do it. So, it's always good to hear that ending.
Well, I'm glad they didn't shoot him. And what I found interesting was, this potluck was, this is before, the social media, the internet, any of that kind of mass communication system, our modern communications. So
Right.
how, this must have been quite a thing to get people who are interested in a topic without, Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff.
I know, it was.
Yeah, how many people do you think were there?
Gosh, there were a lot of people there.
Carol,
what do you think?
I talked to Kevin, and he said at the end of the weekend, he was astonished. He said we had at least a couple thousand people that came through there.
Holy smokes.
And the first day he sold out in a few hours.
Yeah. There were a lot of people, I remember. And how many tables did they have? I mean, people brought food, remember?
I have no idea. There was so
It was
much
a potluck.
food there. Yeah, we put on the barbecue. The guys made barbecues out of 55-gallon drums where I worked. And we had, I think we had 10 of those. And,
Wow.
Jack and I came up with that at the last minute because we talked to Kevin about the event. And he says, oh, yeah, we got to do this. And, the idea was we had entertainment all day long. We put up displays around Kevin's store, and he had a campground there. And the campground was packed. And we decided on the beginning of August because that was right halfway in between the 4th of July and Labor Day. So there'd be lots of people out camping, but they'd be bored with nothing to do. So
yes, it was a great turnout. It really was.
I got Renee to come down and give a slide presentation. And
yes, I remember that.
It was
a fantastic presentation.
It was really turned, and Jack and I couldn't get the posters printed in time, so we only had 2 prototypes, and we put them on the 2 main directions coming and going from the campground to the store. But it seemed to draw a lot of people in.
Well, didn't you put some in downtown Portland and maybe Vancouver in the windows of a couple stores? I remember something about that.
We must have had, made photocopies of stuff and put them out, but I was.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It really was quite the setup there.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And everybody was there for the same reason. That's what made it so exciting, to get to hear other people's stories about their, what happened to them or where they saw Sasquatch. And some people came because they were just interested in the subject too. I remember meeting people like that. And it's too bad we can't do that every year.
Well, yeah, I know. I was hoping to sort of keep that going, but I remember
I know
Cougar did something a little different the second year. We had already committed to it and were involved, and it just wasn't the same kind of a setup. So we decided not to further do that. But something Tom and I are sort of playing with the idea with down the road here. So it could happen again.
Yeah, that'd be great. I wonder if Kevin is still running that place up there.
I talked to him. About 10 years ago, I went down to visit Jack. Jack, had moved out of Vancouver. He lived in Missouri for a while. Yeah. Then he moved back to Vancouver. So I was in Puyallup and reconnected with him and went to visit him periodically. And actually, when I was writing my first book, and we drove up there. We drove up there to see Kevin, and we actually ran into him. He was marrying a gal in New Zealand, and that's where he moved to.
Oh, New Zealand! Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Wow. No Bigfoot there.
No, he was going to go chase something else, I guess, there, whatever's there, so.
I would want to go anywhere where Bigfoot didn't exist.
Well, there aren't
that
too many
wouldn't be
places.
any fun at all. Well, what's amazing? I got a book from a gentleman. He was from New York State, and I was going to step up here and check it out. Oh, it's called Monsters of the Northwest. And I was amazed at all the sightings they were having on the East Coast. I'd heard, I knew about Otto having that sighting in Pennsylvania.
Oh, lots
but,
and lots.
I mean, all the way, it's just amazing how many. I've often wondered, I never heard of it growing up. So I often wondered, if it started at a certain time where they were seeing more on the East Coast, or have they always been there in those numbers, or what?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a matter of contacting people and getting the information. But there's so much stuff going on everywhere.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so when you talk to people about it, you'll always meet or hear someone who's had an experience, it seems like, to me. So I still talk about it, even though I haven't been active in the last number of years. I still have that interest, and I don't think I don't think it'll ever pass. I hope not, anyway. It's been exciting.
Carol, I find that that's great. That is awesome. I just remembered something when you and I were talking the other day, and it was pretty interesting. You had mentioned, and I don't remember what the source was, but I think you said the Native Americans had said that these things used to be very plentiful in the valleys, and then as settlers started to move in, more and more farms and ranches, that drove them up into the mountains. Do you remember that?
Right. That is a gentleman who had written a book, and right now his name escapes me, Peter Byrne, and he had interviewed Native Americans, and I know that Will has too. He may have heard something along those lines, but the Native Americans had told him that there had been many more of them in the valley area in the earlier years. And then when the Native Americans got smallpox, that they believe they died from those because their numbers started to really dwindle. And they were mostly in the high areas, in the mountains and so on. And that was just their, they observed that. And whether that really happened, we don't really know. But it makes sense because...
Now, wait a second. He was saying that the creatures caught smallpox from the humans?
Right. Because the Native American, when they were in such contact in the valley areas, that it's easily transmittable disease. Smallpox. People got it really easily. People die from it, and so it could very well be they could too, because they're very close to human. They probably have a very similar immune system. And the fact that maybe they had never been in contact with a disease before, it could have wiped many of them out. But I'd love to know more about it. I wish we could find out more about it. It would be really interesting, I think.
Yeah, I sure would.
To know. But it makes sense,
Well,
that
it does. And also, it kind of makes you wonder about current events, today's situation, if they're susceptible to something back then, if that indeed was true, could this current, the current pandemic, could that have an effect on them?
Well, if people that have it might have contact in some way, I think it could be possible. I mean, they're structurally the same as us. They're bigger, but they probably have larger body organs like lungs, for example. It could make them more susceptible, It's just, I hate to think of them having to lose numbers. I'm sure they've lost plenty of numbers since, this country has been taken over. So I don't know. And what can we do about it? There's not much we can do, but it would be fascinating to know. To find some other groups, maybe some other Native Americans that had a similar view, or maybe knew. How would they know? I suppose that, from what they told me, numbers dwindled considerably in the valley. And of course, they were affected by the epidemic themselves, and they knew how it affected them. So they probably just assumed it could have affected them.
That's a good point. Yeah, very good point.
Yeah. Yeah,
Carol,
because I know that. Go ahead.
No. I just wanted to ask. So you were involved with the PCSIT, and tell us a little bit about your position and what you did with that organization. Well,
I was. Let's see. I was in charge of. It slipped my mind for just a moment, my position there.
You were the Director of Public Relations.
Oh, Public Relations, that's right. And we did do some of that around the area where we would hold meetings and people would come to them, and usually someone would work with me on it. And I think we did 2 or 3, and it was fun. I got a chance to talk to people that way. And one of the other things I remember that I contributed, I don't know if Will remembers, but we were trying to find a better material to use for the impressions that we were taking, or that Will was taking primarily.
For casting.
Yeah. And I said, I worked I worked as years as a dental hygienist and an assistant in the dental office, and I said we could use maybe a dental stone. And I talked to one of the dentists I knew, and he said, using dental stone might be great. It sat faster. It wasn't so hot, and it sat fast, and it would be lightweight and everything. So, but I don't think we ever got to use it. We bought some. I remember I went to a dental supply store and got a box, but I don't think we ever got a chance to use it to see how it really worked.
I don't think so. I don't remember getting. I always planned on trying to use that.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I know. I wish we could have tried it. But, that, in fact, it's really funny because I was going through a whole lot of receipts I've been collecting over the years, and I came across the receipt for that the day before yesterday. Isn't that funny?
Oh, that is
that
funny.
dental stone I bought at the lab. I had to look at it twice to remember what it was. Yeah. So, I didn't do as much. I was there to talk to people and learn as much as I could. I was hoping against hope I'd get to see one. I really wanted to get to see one.
We were talking about the barbecue. Remember the second day, what we set up for, the first day was more entertainment. The second day was, we had the little group setups kind of, with coffee and donuts. And that was to try to get more people to talk. And do you remember?
Right.
I remember. I think you and Don talked to this guy first. Do you remember Buddy Fight?
The name sounds familiar.
He was the big guy who was a former Hell's Angel, and he also played guitar for Johnny Mathis.
Gosh, I wish I could remember him well.
He was a really big guy.
I don't know.
He was like 6'6" and weighed 300 pounds. He was a big man. So I remember because you guys, you and Don brought him over. I guess you had talked to him and brought him over. And I'm thinking, oh my God! When I heard his name, I knew who he was because I'd read articles in the paper about him. He had kind of this mixed past, but he was a really super nice guy. His life had changed a lot. And he.
Oh gosh, I wish Don were here to tell us.
Yeah, Don. I know Don would remember all that.
Yeah. I don't remember that. Isn't that strange? You'd have thought I would.
Well, you meet people over the years, and depending on the impression they make. Of course, I had a lot more dealings with Buddy than you guys did, but I think you guys just met him that day, and then of course, I spent time with him. Up in the forests up there, and he's showing me places. He had a couple incidents. Tommy's the one we talked about, who he said him and a buddy were poaching, and I want to say in the 70s. So the first incident was where him and a buddy were riding their motorcycles. They wanted to go find the Port Orford meteor, and they camped in that area, and they heard this screech on the hill, and this thing kept coming down the ridge towards them. And they said basically that they hollered out, "Hey, identify yourself, or we're going to shoot." And it didn't identify itself, and it came down to the edge of the fire and started thrashing the trees, just raising this ruckus, and they both shot it in the chest with their 30-30s, and all it did was screech and run off, and it scared them both. So these two big Hells Angels guys are scared to death of this thing, and Buddy said, he says, he told me, he says, we thought it was going to eat us, so we got the heck out of there.
Well, it would scare me if I ever saw one face to face. And I was telling Tom this story, but I don't know if I told you, Will. And it's embarrassing, but maybe I'll tell you, and maybe I did tell you. But anyway, it was after everything had kind of quieted down for a while. A lot had been going on, and Nick and I were out in the front yard, and we were talking, and just reminiscing and just talking, and I'm looking towards I'm looking away from the house, and he's looking up over the hill, where the barn is, where the trail is. And he just looks at me, he says, and we're talking, he says, by the way, he said, I'm looking at one of those creatures right now. He's right up on the hill. And I looked at Nick, and honest to God, I told Tom this, I could not turn. I thought at first, the first thing that went through my head, you often wonder what you would do, and this is what I did. I thought, he's teasing me. If I turn and it's not there, he's just going to laugh at me. And I thought, well, if I turn, I could miss it, and then that would even be worse. I wouldn't get to see it. I could have. Now, can you believe that could go through somebody's mind when one is probably standing up on a hill not too far from them? I couldn't turn.
It was just that power of indecision. You just sitting there just trying to, what do I do?
It was, I don't know. I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but it was a strange. I certainly didn't react the way I thought I would. Let's put it that way.
But you did see, didn't you say that you saw some eyes at one point? We saw something moving in the evening at the end of the highway. I'm pretty sure it probably was from the size and also the eyes, but it was kind of far away. But like I say, we had heard them, call. Well, that one time we were up there, like a coyote, a high-pitched coyote sound, that far from us. And if I'd have looked up there, I probably would have seen him then. I don't know what it was. It was just, I guess the only way I was ever going to see one if they just sprung out in front of me and I had no control. That would be it. Then I'd have to look at them. Maybe I was just afraid to look at it. I don't know. But it was strange. Did I ever tell you that story, Will?
I don't recall.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You just never know sometimes, at least I don't, what I'm going to do at a given time.
I don't think anybody can prepare for it.
No. And I certainly didn't expect that kind of reaction from myself. And I often think of that, and I thought, what was I thinking, That I was going to have a lot of chances? No.
I was telling Tom once, we were talking about, people always ask, well, everybody's got phones and everything, why don't we get more pictures? And I have to relate this because you knew Jack and how Jack was. So we were up here in Northern California, I don't know, must have been about 15 years ago. And we were driving his Suburban way up in the mountains. And we talked about this during the day. I said, we're in an area where there's been a lot of activity, a lot of historical stuff, not that far from Bluff Creek. And I said,
oh, yeah.
A lot of people don't get pictures because they're not ready. And these things only happen in moments. Telling about my encounter, it only happened in moments.
Yes.
So I said,
when you were a boy.
Right. So I said, we need to be prepared. So we were driving around all day. Each of us had a camcorder in our hand, ready to use it at a moment's notice, right? So we were heading back towards our camp about 1 a.m. And, his Suburban was pretty well lit up in the front, and we were just driving along talking. And then I noticed out his side window, there was a road that came adjacent into the one we were driving on. And this is, like I say, they're Forest Service roads, so they were out in the middle of nowhere. And I saw movement on that road. Something was on the road running towards us. And right before I could say anything, this little year-old bear comes zipping right out in front of the truck. And we're both oohing and awing, and Jack is trying to keep up with the little bugger was running like about 25 miles an hour. So we chased it for maybe 100 feet or so, and it zipped off into the brush. And he stops, and I looked at him, I said, now there's exactly what I've been talking about today. We have this opportunity to film something. Both of us have cameras in our hands. Neither one of us got a doggone picture.
I know. My goodness, it do. Might as well leave them home. Well, I remember going to, I can't remember what the event was, but they had booze there. And people were, I just don't remember, maybe you do. And there was a young gal that had a booth, and she always had a camera. She had a camera around her neck. And I said, why are you in it? She said, because I want to be prepared. And just in case, he could step out in front of me at any time, and I thought, that's great to do that, because that's probably going to be the only way you're ever going to get a picture, is if you've got that thing around your neck 24/7.
The problem is, though, you're too busy oohing and awing, and by the time you have the presence of mind to grab the camera, the thing has walked off.
Exactly. I know. I just don't. Well, I guess the way to do it would be to have cameras set up, you know.
I always think to myself.
It would be the real way.
I always think to myself.
I wonder if anybody has. Has anybody done that yet?
Well, they have, but usually they don't work. I mean, typically primates are very well aware of what's in their environment, and especially studies have been done, especially with human-made objects. They really steer clear of that stuff. So, that's a large part of why this doesn't work.
I guess they do notice human-made objects. It wouldn't occur to me they would, but if it's something they don't recognize, I can see that.
Yeah, if it belongs there, then they aren't too concerned about it. If it doesn't belong there, then it's an issue. Sure. Well, Tom, we're running short on time. You have anything else for Carol while we're chatting here? Or?
Carol, I just want to say what a pleasure it was talking to you. And, I really like hearing a different, like I said before when we were talking on the phone, kind of a different angle, a different facet of the same situation, especially the occult situation. So thank you for taking the time to share that with us. We really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for asking me. And I'm really happy to be in Vancouver, and I'm hoping I'm going to get more time up there this year. And who knows,
Very
what
nice.
can happen.
Yeah, there were so many of us there, and I don't remember all the things that happened, and I don't even remember who all the people were that were with us.
I know.
There was just so much that went on during that time period. But yeah, it is good always to hear.
It was exciting.
Hear your perspectives, from the things you saw and heard, and it's too bad that there aren't more people around that were there back then. But
I know. I'm trying to think. I know they're all dispersed. I still have our list of people, but I don't know where any of them are.
I don't either, personally.
Yeah.
Well, listen, folks, we're going to wrap this segment up. Everyone stay tuned for the next segment.
I Met the Abominable Snowman, a true story by Dr. George Moore, M.D. Exclusively published in Sports Afield, May 1957, readers will enjoy this eyewitness novelistic account by the first American to meet face-to-face the mystery animal of the Himalayas, the Yeti. Even without Moore's chance meeting with the mysterious creatures of the Himalayas, the author of this account would have a remarkable story to tell. In October of 1952, Dr. Moore, his wife and daughter, arrived in Nepal. Dr. Moore, as chief of the Public Health Division of the U.S. Operations Mission under the Foreign Operations Administration, was the public health advisor to the new Nepalese government that had thrown the doors of the land open to foreigners for the first time since 1816. Dr. Moore pioneered the health program of a country suddenly plummeted into the 20th century. His duties took him on extensive trips into towns and villages never before seen by white men. Moore became fascinated by the customs and habits of the Nepalese people, a people quick to win his lifelong admiration and respect. After his 2-year tour of duty expired, Moore inactivated his commission in the Public Health Service and is at present director of the San Juan Basin Health Unit in Durango, Colorado. The story begins. Monsoon! Heavy gray clouds that had been drifting northward from Calcutta for days that June in 1953. Already early rains, warning of what was to come, had soaked the red dust of the Himalayas. The air was clean and cool. Myriads of tiny blue, white, and yellow potentilla had suddenly blanketed the green tundra above the timberline. It was curious how the colors deepened as we descended the slope. White grew highest, then yellow, mixed with white, and finally blue flowers dotted the landscape farther down. The rains weren't bad enough to travel in, but at least they were a welcome change from the snow about 17,000 feet. Gusinkun Pass had been the last high obstacle to Kathmandu on our return trip from the northern border of Nepal. In fact, the day before had seen us sloshing knee-deep in the soft, wet snow. Our coolies suffered the most. Half naked and barefooted, they had struggled desperately carrying 80-pound packs on their backs. A Himalayan blizzard is no joke, even for the experienced native porters, when slippery rocks and precocious ledges must be climbed. Brooks, Dr. George K. Brooks, an entomologist on our staff, and I were slowly making our way back to our homes in Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, from a mission of mercy to the Sherpas of the northern country. The government had asked us to help in controlling an epidemic of typhus in Sherpaland, our name for the high Himalayan country close to the Tibet border. We had been the doctors assigned to the job, and now were weary, but satisfied that the evil rickettsia were licked for good. We raced to get home before the monsoon whipped us. Black skies, torrents of rain, and foggy, slippery trails on the sides of the mountains obviously held no love to Himalayan intruders such as we. It was at 11,000 feet. I remember that we had left Turkey-Gyung, the last village of the grateful Sherpas. We were heading south now. The foothills of the Himalayas that surrounded Kathmandu 28 miles away were visible from the tops of the mountains. This was the era of the home of the gods, a holy place to the natives. Our footsteps followed the same path 2,000 or 3,000 devout Hindus take on the annual pilgrimage to worship in the Himalayan heights. A scant 200 or 300 return from these journeys. The rest die along the way. On our journey up, smoke from countless funeral pyres were a reminder of the rigor and mystery of the area. The trail was less steep now, but slick with red mud. Mossy pines closed over us and thrust their sprawling roots across the way. Bloodthirsty leeches, lurking under the rocks and awakened by our sounds, crawled on our boots and up the coolie's dark nude limbs at every step. Only speed and more speed would enable us to leave this dismal, lonely, God-forsaken range of mountains. Brooks, as we called him, and I pushed as hard and as fast as we dared. Abrasive-soled boots and 6-foot balancing poles cut from the timber enabled us to make excellent time on a ribbon of red mud. It was not long before we had left the coolies far behind. Not even their cries and shouts could be heard. The forest was deathly still. Fog banks, raw and cold, drifted through the tall pines and left their boughs dripping and slimy. Rounding a sharp turn in the trail, Brooks stopped abruptly. He leaned against a large rock to extract a leech that was at the point of disappearing over the edge of his boot. I stood there watching Brooks and fumbling for my pipe when an almost imperceptible movement in a clump of tall rhododendron caught my eye. Something had moved, I was sure. There it was again. This time a few leaves rustled more than mere chance could move. Brooks, sensing something was wrong, quickly forgot about his leech. Almost simultaneously, we both slipped our revolvers out of their holsters. On our right, the slope was dangerously steep. Behind us, the slope climbed upward. There was a large boulder by the side of the trail, and we eased over to it, glad for the protection from the rear that it afforded us. We waited, tense and expectant. The stillness was awesome. The fog and mist seemed to form weird shapes, withering and twisting through the dense foliage. Suddenly, from in front of us, a raucous scream pierced the air. Another followed from the right of us. The ghostly quality of the mist and the unreality of the situation had a nightmarish tinge. "God!" Brooks whispered. "What was that?" My spine was tingling in high gear now. I gripped my .38 Smith & Wesson more firmly. About 20 feet away, somewhat in front of our rock, was the clump of rhododendron where the first scream broke the stillness. This time it seemed as though it was behind us. "Brooks," I managed to whisper, "let's get on this rock and in a hurry." Brooks did not need a second invitation. In an instant we scrambled on top of the massive boulder. From our new perch we carefully searched in all directions for the next move. Our movements must have been closely watched, for a loud chattering immediately assailed us from the bushes in front. The angry chatter filled the raw air as new cries joined in the chorus from all sides. We were definitely surrounded. Brooks muttered, "Oh my God, how many of them are there? And what are they?" "Brooks," I managed to whisper, "let's get on this rock and in a hurry." Brooks did not need a second invitation. In an instant we scrambled on top of the massive boulder. From our new perch we carefully searched in all directions for the next move. Our movements must have been closely watched, for a loud chattering immediately assailed us from the bushes in front. The angry chatter filled the raw air as new cries joined in the chorus from all sides. We were definitely surrounded. Brooks muttered, "Oh my God, how many of them are there? And what are they?" We got some idea of what was there when a hideous face thrust apart the wildly thrashing leaves and gaped at us. I shall not long forget the faces. Grayish skin, beetle-black eyebrows, a mouth that seemed to extend from ear to ear, and long yellowish teeth were nerve-shattering enough, but those eyes, beady, yellow eyes, that stared at us with obvious demoniacal cunning and anger, that face! Weird ideas were beginning to force their way into mind. Perhaps, but no, damn it, it has to be. This was the abominable snowman. No, I insisted to myself, there is no such creature as an abominable snowman or yeti. This face has to be an ape or a man or a demon. Or the snowman. A hand pushed through the leaves, then a quick movement and a shoulder. There before us appeared the semblance of a body. Sweat was visible on Brooks' face now as we crouched lower, hugging the rock for what it was worth. My hands looked white in the semi-darkness. As the creature emerged through the dark leaves, we strained to make out this form. I felt blind panic start through me. Then I stopped. Balls of fire, I thought. I've got to get a grip on myself. The creature was about 5 feet tall, half crouching on 2 thin, hairy legs, leering at us in an undisguised fury. Claws or hands seemed dark, perhaps black, while his bedraggled, hairy body was gray and thin. It shuffled along with a stoop the way a Neolithic caveman might have walked. Well-built and sinewy, it could prove to be the most formidable opponent. Teeth bared, it snarled like an animal. 2 long fangs protruded from its upper lip. Suddenly, a sharp, flickering movement behind it caught our eyes. "George, a tail! Look there!" Brooks cried. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind at once. "Well, Brooks," I replied, "this thing could be the abominable snowman, but it also can be an ape, a large logger ape, perhaps." Truthfully, I was more concerned with survival than identification. The band of animals was certainly aggressive, giving every indication that they meant to destroy us, but I couldn't help thinking about the creatures themselves. They didn't look like the common langur monkeys I had seen in India. At the same time, they had ape-like characteristics. Scientific possibilities crowded their way into my mind, even as I checked my revolver for the attack. Higher altitudes, fewer minerals in the water, could produce less hair. Lack of heavy timber in the high regions, which would make climbing ability relatively valueless, could produce an erect species. Mutations, the methods by which new species are created, have occurred and are constantly observable in laboratories. Variations within a single species over a period of time can produce animals greatly different from the parent strain. I had no time to share these thoughts with Brooks. The best I could mumble was an unsteady, "Get ready." Other figures were now approaching from several directions. We could make out 6 or 7 of them through the mist. One appeared to be carrying a baby around its neck. They seemed to mean business as they growled at each other. The one that had pushed through the foliage first was a leader. There was little question as to his authority as he led the attack. "Brooks," I said hurriedly, "let's try firing over their heads to see if we can scare them. Don't hit them, for heaven's sake, or we may have them in a frenzy. A wounded animal, if they are animals, won't stop. And if they are demons, the Sherpas will never forgive us if we kill them. The Sherpas, superstitious as they are, would rather be killed than offend their gods, especially here." "Okay, George, you say when," he replied softly. We sighted carefully through the fog and waited until the repulsive faces were about 10 feet away. We squeezed the triggers almost together. The blast swirled in the fog in front of us. Splinters of wood and torn leaves fell through the foliage. The creatures stopped abruptly. A deathly fearsome silence pervaded the darkening air. "Let's give them another one, Brooks," I shouted, more confident now. The second volley resounded, and we were definitely reassured. A third round this time convinced the demons. They turned, howling like wounded coyotes, and fled into the thicket. The excited chattering from the gray gloom told us, however, that they had not gone far. Brooks was reassured. As we reloaded, he asked jauntily, "What's next, George? Shall we attack?" I felt as Brooks felt. We needed to do something and do it fast. On second thought, however, caution was required. Slowly, I said, "We'll wait it out. I believe until our coolies catch up. We wouldn't have a chance if we moved forward or even tried to make a break. I don't believe that they'll attack the whole party. Our problem now is just how far behind are the coolies. It's getting dark and these pirates won't miss the chance to eat us alive if I don't miss my gas. In another 20 minutes we won't be able to see it all." We sank back on the rock and waited there in the twilight, nervous as cats caught up a tree. We listened for the sound of the coolies, and we listened for the change in the growls from the thicket that might indicate another attack. At this point we knew the demons were discussing our future and wondering how to play their cards. We tried to joke, but it was corny and useless. We were scared. The fog was unbearable. It penetrated our wet clothes and chilled our bodies. I shivered suddenly. The rock was uncomfortable. We squirmed continuously as rough edges dug into our muscles. Fog now, almost impenetrable, swirled slowly through the black foliage, throwing dark shadows here and there in wraith-like patterns. Grotesque forms appeared and gaped at us, only to disappear and leave our eyes red and tear-stained from the strain. Brooks pulled out a cigarette and lit it nervously. I knew he wasn't enjoying it. It couldn't be worth the effort. Perhaps it gave him something to do with his free hand. It was then that I discovered that I was unconsciously clicking the cylinder release on my revolver back and forth. Brooks gave me a dirty look and I stopped. The chattering and snarling from the thicket came only intermittently now. I tried to guess the leader's plan. Was he waiting for reinforcements? No, not likely. There couldn't be too many of them in the hills, and this, no doubt, was the entire pack. Planning to attack? This was more reasonable. No doubt they would hit us in one mad rush. Yes, a single-massed attack at the time of their choosing. They would certainly wait until dark at any rate. Damn those coolies! Where were they? The lazy, unreliable boneheads! Have they bedded down for the night? No, they would want a village with all the comforts attached. They'll come. It was almost dark now. We kept straining to see through the gray mist. We were cold and wet. Our clothes clung to us. A black and yellow striped leech, crawling up the rock, fastened itself on Brooks' boot. The leech, unsure of its prey, stopped and listened. Weaving its upright body slowly in the air, I reached down and plucked it off the wet leather. Half-consciously, I rolled the worm in my fingers, trying to crush it. It was too rubbery. I flung it into the trail in sudden disgust. The chattering around us was growing noticeably louder. Sudden loud and urgent growls portended something new in the offing. Brooks, this is it. Shoot to kill this time and pray. I remember giving him one last look. We had met in Kathmandu only the year before. Already he had become a friend that I could know forever. I cocked the .38 and waited. "George," Brooks whispered excitedly. "They've stopped talking." An uncanny and eerie silence pervaded the air. What was happening? I raised myself a bit higher on the rock. If they were crawling in for the attack, we had to make every shot count. In the bad light, a .38 would not be a very effective weapon, and they wouldn't be afraid this time. But not a movement was discernible. Not a sound could be heard. We waited anxiously, sweat adding to the soddenness of our clothes. "Damn it, George! Where are they?" Then a sound from the right, a cracking of a twig. "They're coming down the trail, George. Can you see them?" I sighted the barrel of the .38 at the leading figure in the mist. Almost now. A bit closer. "Sahib? Sahib?" a voice called in the darkness. I hesitated a moment and then came to a sudden realization. Brooks, it's the coolies. Thank God we're okay now. Shiva, we're here. Shiva, on the rock. Come ahead." Beautiful, lovely Shiva, My Gurkha foreman, boss of the porters, one of the finest men I've ever known, can ever hope to know, a loyal, dependable, quiet little man whose resource and strength lay deep within him, not on the surface. A look from him had more effect on the Sherpas than a whiplash would have. For me, he was always there when I needed him. I needed him now. He was here. Sahib, you okay? We hear shots. We come up quick. God Almighty, we thank you, Brooks murmured. Yes, Shiva, we're okay now, I said. Let's go home. My staff and friends back in Kathmandu got quite a laugh when we described our experience on the ridge near Kusinkund. Several wanted to go back immediately, but the monsoon was on us and the torrents made mountain travel out of the question. When the rains had spent their fury, my medical duties took me twice again through the same region. I never saw the animals again. What was it that we saw? A mutant species that man has not yet categorized? Some kind of ape, large, erect, adapted to the high altitudes, made antisocial by its self-imposed isolation, jealous of any invasion of its realm? Perhaps. Or was it an entirely new species, an undiscovered animal, a leftover remnant of a prehistoric day, a creature clever enough to elude the curiosity of man, inhabiting an area still almost wholly unpenetrated by even the Sherpas, who seldom stray from the time-worn trails. From 1816 to 1951, the country of Nepal, for all intent and purpose, was closed to the outside world. Even today, only a handful of outsiders have explored but a tiny portion of this land. Yet it was this handful, more interested in climbing mountains than foraging for new species, that brought back tales and evidence of the mysterious creature they call the Yeti. One thing is certain. Whatever science will someday discover it to be, the creature humankind has called the abominable snowman is there in the Himalayan heights. I know. I met it there on the pilgrim trail from Tarke Gyong.
Frontiersmen are not, as a rule, apt to be very superstitious. They lead lives too hard and practical, and have too little imagination in things spiritual and supernatural. I have heard but few ghost stories while living on the frontier, and those few were of a perfectly commonplace and conventional type. But I once listened to a goblin story, which rather impressed me. A grizzled, weather-beaten old mountain hunter named Bauman, who, born and had passed all of his life on the frontier, told the story to me. He must have believed what he said, for he could hardly repress a shudder at certain points of the tale. But he was of German ancestry, and in childhood had doubtless been saturated with all kinds of ghost and goblin lore, so that many fearsome superstitions were latent in his mind. Besides, he knew well the stories told by the Indian medicine men in their winter camps, of the snow walkers and the specters, the formless evil beings that haunt the forest depths, and dog and waylay the lonely wanderer who after nightfall passes through the regions where they lurk. It may be that when overcome by the horror of the fate that befell his friend, and when oppressed by the awful dread of the unknown, he grew to attribute, both at the time and still more in remembrance, weird and elfin traits to what was merely some abnormally wicked and cunning wild beast. But whether this was so or not, no man can say. When the event occurred, Bauman was still a young man and was trapping with a partner among the mountains dividing the forks of the Salmon from the head of Wisdom River. Not having had much luck, he and his partner determined to go up into a particularly wild and lonely pass, through which ran a small stream said to contain many beavers. The pass had an evil reputation because the year before, a solitary hunter who had wandered into it was slain, seemingly by a wild beast, the half-eaten remains being afterwards found by some mining prospectors who had passed his camp only the night before. The memory of this event, however, weighted very lightly with the two trappers, who were as adventurous and hardy as others of their kind. They took their 2 lean mountain ponies to the foot of the pass, where they left them in an open beaver meadow, the rocky, timber-clad ground being from there onward impractical for horses. They then struck out on foot through the vast, gloomy forest, and in about 4 hours reached a little open glade where they concluded to camp, as signs of game were plenty. There was still an hour or 2 of daylight left, and after building a brush lean-to and throwing down and opening their packs, they started upstream. The country was very dense and hard to travel through, as there was much down timber, although here and there the somber woodland was broken by small glades of mountain grass. At dusk, they again reached camp. The glade in which it was pitched was not many yards wide, the tall, close-set pines and firs rising round it like a wall. On one side was a little stream beyond which rose the steep mountain slope, covered with the unbroken growth of evergreen forest. They were surprised to find that during their absence, something, apparently a bear, had visited camp and had rummaged about among their things, scattering the contents of their packs and in sheer wantonness destroying their lean-to. The footprints of the beast were quite plain, but at first they paid no particular heed to them, busying themselves with rebuilding the lean-to, laying out their beds and stores and lighting the fire. While Bowman was making ready supper, it being already dark, his companion began to examine the tracks more closely, and soon took a brand from the fire to follow them up, where the intruder had walked along a game trail after leaving the camp. When the brand flickered out, he returned and took another, repeating his inspection of the footprints very closely. Coming back to the fire, he stood by it a minute or 2, peering out into the darkness, and suddenly remarked, "Bowman, that bear has been walking on 2 legs." Bowman laughed at this, but his partner insisted that he was right, and upon again examining the tracks with a torch, they certainly did seem to be made by but 2 paws or feet. However, it was too dark to make sure. After discussing whether the footprints could possibly be those of a human being, and coming to the conclusion that they could not be, the 2 men rolled up in their blankets and went to sleep under the lean-to. At midnight, Bowman was awakened by some noise and sat up in his blankets. As he did so, his nostrils were struck by a strong, wild beast odor, and he caught the loom of a great body in the darkness at the mouth of the lean-to. Grasping his rifle, he fired at the vague, threatening shadow, but must have missed, for immediately afterwards he heard the smashing of the underwood as the thing, whatever it was, rushed off into the impenetrable blackness of the forest and the night. After this, the 2 men slept but little, sitting up by the rekindled fire, but they heard nothing more. In the morning, they started out to look at the few traps they had set the previous evening and put out new ones. By an unspoken agreement, they kept together all day and returned to camp towards evening. On nearing it, they saw, hardly to their astonishment, that the lean-to had again been torn down. The visitor of the preceding day had returned, and in wanton malice had tossed about their camp kit and bedding and destroyed the shanty. The ground was marked up by its tracks, and on leaving the camp it had gone along the soft earth by the brook. The footprints were as plain as if on snow, and after a careful scrutiny of the trail, it certainly did seem as if, whatever the thing was, it had walked off on but 2 legs. The men, thoroughly uneasy, gathered a great heap of dead logs and kept up a roaring fire throughout the night, one or the other sitting on guard most of the time. About midnight, the thing came down through the forest opposite, across the brook, and stayed there on the hillside for nearly an hour. They could hear the branches crackle as it moved about, and several times it uttered a harsh, grating, long-drawn moan, a peculiar, sinister sound. Yet it did not venture near the fire. In the morning, the 2 trappers, after discussing the strange events of the last 36 hours, decided that they would shoulder their packs and leave the valley that afternoon. They were the more ready to do this because, in spite of seeing a good deal of game sign, they had caught very little fur. However, it was necessary first to go along the line of their traps and gather them, and this they started out to do. All the morning they kept together, picking up trap after trap, each one empty. On first leaving camp, they had the disagreeable sensation of being followed. In the dense spruce thickets, they occasionally heard a branch snap after they had passed, and now and then there were slight rustling noises among the small pines to one side of them. At noon, they were back within a couple of miles of camp. In the high, bright sunlight, their fears seemed absurd to the two armed men, accustomed as they were through long years of lonely wandering in the wilderness to face every kind of danger from man, brute, or element. There were still 3 beaver traps to collect from a little pond in a wide ravine nearby. Bauman volunteered to gather these and bring them in, while his companion went ahead to camp and made ready the packs. On reaching the pond, Bauman found 3 beavers in the traps, one of which had been pulled loose and carried into a beaver house. He took several hours in securing and preparing the beaver, and when he started homewards, he marked with some uneasiness how low the sun was getting. As he hurried toward camp under the tall trees, the silence and desolation of the forest waited on him. His feet made no sound on the pine needles, and the slanting sun rays, striking through among the straight trunks, made a gray twilight in which objects at a distance glimmered indistinctly. There was nothing to break the gloomy stillness which, when there is no breeze, always broods over these somber, primeval forests. At last he came to the edge of the little glade where the camp lay, and shouted as he approached it, but got no answer. The campfire had gone out, though the thin blue smoke was still curling upwards. Near it lay the packs, wrapped and arranged. At first Bauman could see nobody, nor did he receive an answer to his call. Stepping forward, he again shouted, and as he did so, his eye fell on the body of his friend, stretched beside the trunk of a great fallen spruce. Rushing towards it, the horrified trapper found that the body was still warm, but that the neck was broken, while there were 4 great fang marks in the throat. The footprints of the unknown beast creature printed deep in the soft soil told the whole story. The unfortunate man, having finished his packing, had sat down on the spruce log with his face to the fire and his back to the dense woods to wait for his companion. While thus waiting, his monstrous assailant, which must have been lurking in the woods, waiting for a chance to catch one of the adventurers unprepared, came silently up from behind, walking with long, noiseless steps and seemingly still on 2 legs. Evidently unheard, it reached the man and broke his neck by wrenching his head back with its forepaws, while it buried its teeth in his throat. It had not eaten the body, but apparently had romped and gamboled around it in uncouth, ferocious glee, occasionally rolling over and over it, and then fled back into the soundless depths of the woods. Bauman, utterly unnerved and believing that the creature with which he had to deal was something either half-human or half-devil, some great goblin beast, abandoned everything but his rifle and struck off at speed down the pass, not halting until he reached the beaver meadows where the hobbled ponies were still grazing. Mounting, he rode onwards through the night until beyond reach of pursuit. Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.